Hello and welcome to the very 13th episode of the second newest show on the Stat Check Network. It is episode 13 of Take All Comers, Pariah Nexus tier list OMG WTF. We are live on air on the YouTube channel. It is 4:31 p.m. We are functionally on time for the first time in our lives at the new time on Mondays. Catch us live on youtube.com/statcheck if you want to be a part of that action. We are here today, as the title and clickbaity thumbnail suggests, to bring you everyone's favorite kind of Warhammer 40k content. It's Tier List to Monday. So get hyped for that. We're going to be breaking down the Pariah Nexus missions, continuing where we left off last week. We're going to be looking at primary. We're going to be looking at secondary. We're going to be looking at some other stuff. And it's all going to be happening right after we check in with the boys. How we doing today, Lucas?
I'm all right. This has been an interesting week for sure. We're kind of coming to a conclusion of getting our list ready for WTC. So the last couple days of that have been a little bit exciting and stressful and eager anticipation to see others' lists and, you know, all those wonderful, happy and, you know, terrified emotions. And it's also been a mega hot weekend in Portland. So we've all just kind of been like lethargically sitting around. So I'm experiencing like a mixture of terror that we're going to Europe in 4 weeks and, you know, extreme lethargy, which is a fun combination. Always just wonderful. So, yeah, you know, doing okay, hanging in there, and I'm excited to go. We'll be playing some Warhammer in Europe soon. How about you, Nick? How you doing?
It is warm, my brother. Yeah, so I am sitting next to a hot computer in a hot room with a lot of fans going. So, yeah, we're hit by a big heat wave here in Portland, but we had a fun weekend. We just had a friend visit, played some Warhammer. Lucas and I had a very fun game the other day that ended in a dead drop between the two of us, 66-66. Good old, you know, getting like 23 primary points or some shit like on the last round, which we'll be talking about today. How some of these missions can score you a lot of points. But yeah, overall, doing good. Excited to do some tier listing. How about you, Tyler?
Oh man, I'm mega frozen, aren't I? Can you hear or see me?
The audio is fine.
You can hear me?
Your visual is very
okay.
Choppy.
It is 100 degrees outside. It is 90 degrees inside. I am overheating. My computer is overheating. Everything is a disaster, but I am loving it. Because we're talking about Warhammer today, and that's all that really matters. I've been having a ton of fun playing Tyranids recently. We got that stat rep up last week of the Vanguard Nids. Check that out if you haven't yet. It's awesome, and I'm having a ton of fun. The WTC hype is very real. We're getting crazy close, and that's very exciting. But man, oh man, would I love it to not be so damn hot. Yeah, I got nothing that y'all haven't said yet. Sweet. Well, we have a whole lot of tier listing to do and not a whole lot of time to do it. So, Lucas, why don't you go ahead and break down what's actually going to be transpiring today before these lovely live studio audience members?
Yeah, so for those who may have been longtime fans of the show, you may remember our first Leviathan. No, it wasn't Leviathan. It was Was it Arcs of Omen? No, it was Leviathan. I'm just a lunatic. It was the Leviathan mission pack review when we were still on the Best in Tabletop network. So we're going to be doing much the same as we did there. We're just going to set up a very traditional tier list with some slightly altered tier titles you may see momentarily. And we're just going to basically go through all of the deployments, all of the mission rules, all of the primary missions, and all of the secondaries. And we're going to kind of break them down into tiers. And then when we get to the end of each of those four, we'll kind of sort through them and list them from top of A to bottom of A, that kind of thing. But we kind of like we enjoy not having like very stringent criteria. It's not like these aren't like the most competitive or the most fun or the most balanced. We kind of just amalgamate all of them and decide like what's the general vibe of this mission. Is this a good one? Is this a bad one? Is this one like enjoyable to play? So it's kind of a mixture of a bunch of different criteria. So yeah, that's what we're going to be doing for the next couple hours. Did I miss anything, guys?
Sweet. I didn't hear a single word of that, but the most important thing is that our word is law. We are the only experts on this. We have 100% confidence in everything that we have to say, and if you disagree with it, you should spend money to yell at us about it in Patreon, though you are wrong. It will be shouted down by the huddled masses that agree with us. So without further ado, let's jump in to our first category. If StreamYard will let me on my computer that is actively fighting for its life. Can y'all see my screen? We're in a Zoom meeting in 2020 at this point. I have no idea what's happening.
Yes.
Sweet. All right, so first up, we are breaking down the deployment zones. Some of these are old, some of them are new. If you didn't know what some of them are, check out last week's episode to hear all about it. Let's start off with some of the old faithfuls before we get into some of this new nonsense. Don't pay attention to the order that they seem to appear in. That order is false. Let's start off talking about Hammer and Anvil, kind of the oldest living deployment that doesn't make me want to gouge my eyes out. What do you guys think about Hammer and Anvil?
I still like Hammer and Anvil. I think it's a little bit become superseded by its kind of big brother, which is Tipping Point. It's a newer brother, but it is a much cooler, snazzier deployment in my opinion. But I think Hammer and Anvil still does the job. It has some cool aspects to it that are completely unique. You know, like Crucible and Search and Destroy. Your deployment isn't very deep. Your opponent starts like relatively close to you. But on Hammer and Anvil, you have the entire length of the very long Warhammer board to, play with, which has some interesting dynamics. So I'm honestly kind of a fan of Hammer and Anvil. I'd probably put it in Art of War tier. I think it's very solid, but there's nothing particularly flashy about it. How do you guys feel?
Do we want to take a sec to explain what maybe these different tiers mean? Because I know people are used to like S, A, B, C, etc.
Oh, sure. And at the very least, read them out for people who are in audio only.
Yeah, you're listening. Yep.
What do we
Lucas,
got?
You want to explain what these?
Yeah. What are the tiers?
So, I mean, you can if you're an absolute Luddite, you can definitely think of them as a S, A, B, C, and D, F, whatever the hell tier. But yeah, these are actually from best to worst. Deploy on the line tier, aka very good. Based, which is pretty darn good. Art of War, which is totally respectable. Cringe, which is certainly not respectable. And Shoots Gun. And as we all know, if you shoot gun, you're all the way down there in Muck Eater, Paste Eater tier. Terrible tier.
Yeah, Shoots Gun.
Absolutely.
Very,
if you have any questions or suggestions about the tier system, go ahead and drop those in your local mailbox, and they'll make it to us somehow. Don't worry about it. But yeah, Hammer and Anvil. What do you think, Nick?
I don't really like Hammer and Anvil. One of the things we talked about with Hammer and Anvil that we were most excited about was them changing it to have like off-center objectives. Like, I think one of the coolest parts would have, a big change that would have been nice to it was like the center one's right in the center, but then the other two are like staggered a little closer to your DCs. And I think, what was it? Gosh, I'm going to get these mixed. Sweeping engagement, right? That's the weird Hammer and Anvil.
Tipping Point's the weird.
No, Tipping Point.
Gotcha. All right, that's the one we played on. So Tipping Point, as soon as I saw that deployment, I was really excited because I thought that was replacing Hammer and Anvil. I was like, this is basically the improvement that I want. And then they still kept Hammer and Anvil. So I think Hammer and Anvil, at least for me, is somewhere between Art of War and Cringe. I'm honestly leaning more towards Cringe. I think it's a pretty cringe deployment. I don't think it's down all the way in Shoots Gun tier, but I think it's very close. So that's what I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, I'm with it. I think that Hammer and Anvil used to be an entirely respectable deployment, but at this point, we've really moved past the need for it. We have other deep deployments. We have seen better deployments. And as both of y'all have pointed out, straight across deployments are rather cringe. So I feel like that's a pretty reasonable home for that. Oh, man. Is it going to let me put it somewhere? Please? Oh, my gosh.
Maybe turning your video off.
Why did I?
Yeah, turn your video off. I think your computer's trying to keep up with
Okay,
that a little
sure.
too much.
That can be arranged.
Did it help?
I don't even know if that turned my video off.
It did.
Okay,
Oh,
great.
Jesus fucking Christ.
So all super chats will be going towards getting Tyler a new computer at this point.
Is it plugged in, you
donate
fucking
now.
genius?
Yes, my computer is plugged in. But also, why does that?
Taylor's computer
Like
definitely lowering towards shoots gun tier at this point.
That shit's below shoots gun, dude. It shoots pebbles.
Yeah, can we like rename shoots gun to like Tyler's computer?
Let's not get too hasty, dude. We're still working on moving
enough.
moving hammer and anvil up.
Whatever the case, we know it's in cringe tier. We'll get some other stuff going in a second. Up next, in terms of, we've talked so much about Tipping Point already. It seems like a natural segue over. How do you guys feel about Tipping Point? And we've all played on it a couple of times now.
Yeah, so I mean, if the main issue with hammer and anvil is the objectives are very just straight across the middle, boring and like easily accessible, the Tipping Point ones are, I think, much more interesting. And I think something that I've noticed about Tipping Point is like your natural expansion is on your weaker side, if that makes sense, right? The objective that's closer to your deployment zone is toward the short end of the Tipping Point, because Tipping Point is now like a staggered deployment where the right side you have 20 inches up, and on the left side you have, I think it's either 10 or 12 inches up. And so that natural expansion objective is on the left side, very close to that 12-inch like deployment zone chunk. So it kind of like your natural expansion's on the same side it normally would be on like Crucible of Battle, but it's not the side that you naturally want to deploy your army on. So it kind of has like some cool dynamics there. Like it's not very clear where your expansion is, and so that can create a lot more like play on all of the objectives over the course of the game instead of just locking down your one very easily expanded objective. And with the kind of like cancel lever objectives, it just makes for a more interactive game. So I really like Tipping Point. I think it's one of the big winners in the new packet. How do you feel, Nick?
I think for me, Tipping Point's like fresh and new, and it basically fixed everything I wanted out of Hammer and Anvil. The staggered deployments are taking a little bit to get used to, but it does create interesting stuff with secondaries, because a lot of like secondaries these days, the action ones ask you to have a unit in no man's land. So you can still like on the smaller side of the DZ, right, have a unit that's closer to your DZ, doesn't have to like go as far forward up. I put Tipping Point into base tier. Maybe after a few games I might like feel a different way, but I don't know. Like I love where the objectives are located. I love the DZ. It is the superior I guess whatever Hammer and Anvil layout is. The superior layout where you have to stand on the far ends of the table.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Based, I think, is a pretty good spot for it.
Absolutely. I think so as well.
We got movement.
It was letting me move all the things a moment ago. There we go. Absolutely. Tipping Point is 100%. A is for base tier. It's super fun to play on. The middle being quite close together isn't that big of a deal because you have so many different areas to spread out into. It just means that if you want to slam something into the center objective very quickly, maybe with a scout move or whatnot, no problem with that. I love this deployment. And I've also really enjoyed the maps, the WTC maps that have been associated with it. I haven't played as much on the GW boards, but they're But Tipping Point's slightly longer, skinnier cousin, the brand new and quote-unquote improved sweeping engagement.
I feel like this is mostly the same as old sweeping engagement. Just, I guess you have a point a little bit closer to your opponent in the middle of the board if you want to just deploy right at like the apex of that, like of the furthest, the middle part of the left side basically of sweeping engagement. So you're like start a little bit closer, but it still has all of those hallmarks. Like you're playing on a very wide front and you're playing sweeping engagement, right? Like it's very difficult to castle, because moving on to your natural expansion means it's going to take like 2 or 3 turns to get toward the middle, and then 2 or 3 more turns to get to your opponent's objective. So like you either have to have a very strong plan to hold 3, or you need to play the entire front of your deployment zone, which I think is pretty cool. And in other deployments like well, Hammer Naval and Tipping Point are honestly kind of like the opposite, where you can kind of concentrate and then sweep up or something like that, or favor one flank. If you favor one flank in sweeping engagement, your army is not necessarily out of position, but like it's going to take a while for you to respond to things your opponent's doing. I like sweeping engagement. I think it's really fun. I would put it in. I haven't played on it the most. I'd probably put it in Art of War tier for now. I think it's pretty solid.
Yeah, I think in terms of gameplay, it is kind of a direct downgrade from old sweeping engagement. I don't find any parts of it that I enjoy more, but from a logistics perspective of no longer having to freak out that my opponent's deployment zone is probably totally misdrawn, I can appreciate it at least. If you live in TTS world, it's kind of a bummer, but if you live in the real world, I definitely see the appeal. If you want to live in neither of those worlds, check out the link in the description and go over to reddragon.ca and check out our stat check branded mats that have the deployment zones drawn straight on them, including these brand new ones. If you're a stat check patron on our Patreon, there's a discount code there waiting for you as well. Take advantage of that. Would recommend it. Anyway,
even from the depths of lag, he plugs.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you guys here.
Yeah.
I think sweeping exactly totally fine in Art of War. I think it is going to fall. I again haven't played on this one as much as the other ones. Actually, I don't think I played on new sweeping yet, so I can't really go to speak about that. But my gut says it might have some similar problems to Dawn of War. At least the staggered objectives brings it above that. But like the part where you start pretty far up is a little spooky to me. But at least your opponent has the option to deploy far away from that, like they did on old sweeping. So
yeah, you're not significantly closer to your opponent's back edge than you used to be. Even though the deployment zones themselves are in theory closer together, that requires you to deploy in different places. But it's kind of like in Table Quarters in a Search and Destroy, how you can sit pretty darn far back, even if in theory you can go deployment zone to deployment zone very quickly.
Yeah, so
sweet. Sounds like Art of War tier to me. Awesome. Now we can just kind of go in order here. Let's talk about Crucible of Battle, which is the deployment that everyone likes so much they couldn't get rid of it even when they tried. This is the good old-fashioned, the only remaining diagonal deployment. Lucas, tell me about how much you love Crucible of Battle, because it's the only thing I've ever seen you play.
That's not entirely true. Probably.
Yeah, Luke's played Tipping Point the other day.
That is true. Yeah, Crucible is still one of the best deployments. In my mind, it is the best deployment. I would put it squarely in deploy on the line tier, because there's lots of different strategies you can use in Crucible Battle. You can deploy on the line. You can try to contest your opponent's natural expansion. You can go to your own. Like it's a relatively balanced deployment. It has depth. It has width. You're not like super spread out. You're not super concentrated. There's no extremes. It's just like very well balanced. And I think we can see that kind of on display in the number of times it shows up on GW's recommended missions, right? Like I think they did a good job of listening to feedback from the Leviathan packet and realizing that some of the wackier combos in there just weren't really meant for tournaments, and that a lot of the more balanced deployment types, like now we have Tipping Point, which I think is pretty balanced. Crucible of Battle is also a very balanced one. Those should be kind of favored a lot more. They should get more terrain layouts for variety's sake, and they should have more missions for tournament stability's sake. So I think Crucible of Battle is now rightfully recognized as the best deployment in the game. That is just my opinion, though. How do you guys feel?
I'm going to have to go right out and agree with you. When I think of Warhammer 40K, I think of Crucible Battle. It is the one that whenever people want to like test lists or play like a, what you're saying, balance/neutral mission, it's the deployment that everyone's drawn towards. We did take a bit of a step back from it in Leviathan, but like 9th edition. There were tons of Crucible missions, and I'm glad to see that it's back, because I think the only like recommended mission it had was like that I saw consistently was Purge the Foe. So it was annoying playing on like the best deployment with one of the not as fun primaries. So I'm glad to see it making a resurgence, because it's super fun to play on.
Could not agree more. Crucible is deploy on the line tier. It is absolutely fantastic. No notes, just more of it, please. Sweet. Well, speaking of defaults, I feel like our other default these days is Search and Destroy. I know it is the Tony Vanilla default special with extra blood sauce. What do you guys feel about Search and Destroy, which has remained unchanged since it was released in 8th?
It can definitely lead to some swingy outcomes, which I feel like it's like it kind of gets a bad rap for that. Bad rep, whatever the hell the expression is. But I do like it. Yeah, I don't know. There's many times I think if you and your opponent have like the same, if you're both playing like, brawler armies, or you're both playing shooting armies or something like that, I think it can lead to really fun games. But if one person's like playing very aggressively, one person's trying to play a very passive style, or one person's playing a board control army and the other person's playing a late game takeover army, like when you and your opponent have opposed styles of play, I think it can lead to really swingy outcomes where one person is dramatically favored because, you start so close to all of the objectives and with complete board control if you go first. So that's my biggest knock against it, but I still enjoy it. Like if I'm playing orcs and my opponent's playing demons, or if I'm playing chaos knights and my opponent's playing imperial knights or something like that, and we're just like brawling, I think those games can be really fun. I like Search and Destroy. But sometimes, if I'm playing orcs and my opponent's playing Tau, they feel bad if I go first, like much more so than usual, if that makes sense. How do you feel about this, Nick?
Yeah, I think the deployment is very polarizing. Like what you're saying, it's really easy for a pressure army to trap their opponent on their DZ, which I don't think is a terrible thing, because like we have missions like Sweeping Engagement, right, where the front is much wider and you're able to like fight on multiple fronts better. I think the trade-off between Search and Destroy is that usually, right, there's Dawn of War, which usually, I guess Dawn of War also favors aggressive armies, but like also favors shooting armies, because like Dawn of War, there's usually tons of wide open angles. What we've seen in the Leviathan mission pack, though, and also at WTC, is that like Dawn of War is like pretty much straight up banned. Like people just don't really play Dawn of War anymore. So now we have this one mission that like massively favors pressure armies over other armies, which I don't think is a horrible thing to have, except that Search and Destroy is paired with Supply Drop, which is another mission that is so like go first pressure oriented. Because like what you're saying, like if you're playing a late game like primary control army, like Kalyan or something like that, your goal is to outlast the waves of pressure and then go out and score points later in the game. But if the objectives are all gone by the time turn 4 or 5 rolls around, like you lose. So I think that puts Search and Destroy somewhere between cringe and Shoots Gun. My I would say cringe just based off the deployment, but I could be argued down to Shoots Gun.
In my opinion, it's not quite that low. I think it's a very fair one, but I really would not put it above Art of War. I think it belongs in Art of War personally. No,
I'm agreeing with you there. I think that I've talked a lot in the past about how I don't like this for the ability for pressure stuff like you guys have there. But I think something else that we haven't mentioned is just how overvalued early mobility is on this as compared to other things, particularly with infiltrating and scouts. I feel like infiltrate and scouts are both good rules to have on most deployments, and they're oppressive rules to have on this. As someone who's been playing with a lot of infiltrators lately, and frankly has been for a while with Aberrants, like when your opponent doesn't have the ability to start the game on their expansion or prevent you from getting to yours immediately, and only one side has those sorts of abilities, it can really mess things up. And I feel like that more than the question of who's playing melee, who's playing guns, who's playing aggression, who's playing passive, like the ability to stand and be standing in the places you need to stand in this mission at the beginning of the game versus, especially if you go second, it taking you a whole turn, a whole battle round to get there. can really lead to some bad play experiences. And for that reason, I agree. I would not put it above Art of War, but I still think it's better than Hammer and Anvil. I think it's between Hammer and Sweeping. It's just a question of which side of the cringe Art of War line you want to put it on. That it comes down to for me.
I'd agree with that. I would prefer to play this over Hammer and Anvil.
I think it's probably pretty on par with Sweeping. So I just throw it in the middle
just based off the deployment alone. I think when you pair it with Supply Drop, it goes a tier down, but we're not rating that right now. So.
We'll do a tier list of letters A through O or whatever it is another day. But today we're focusing on things in a vacuum. So, Search and Destroy, Art of War. Oh, come on! I was able to move things so freely a minute ago. Please, no. Anyway, speaking of blank of war. It's time for everyone's favorite deployment, Dawn of War, which received the most nonsensical change of Pariah Nexus, in my opinion, other than the plain strategic reserves change, which is that it got bigger. So you're closer to your opponent's deployment zone, or you're closer to your opponent's table edge now, for no apparent reason. How do you boys feel about Dawn of War? Do we even need to talk about this?
No, I think it's much better than it was previously. Specifically for the reason that it shows up once in the Pariah Nexus mission packet. And if we're going to rate these things holistically, the fact that this piece of shit deployment doesn't show up is a great thing.
We're not rating them holistically, though. We're rating them in a vacuum. We just said that. But
that's why I think it belongs at the bottom of cringe tier as opposed to in Shoot's gun tier.
Oh, man.
You don't think it belongs in Shoot's gun tier?
I think it belongs
because we don't have to actually play it.
Oh, well, I think it's Shoot's gun. I think if I roll up to your house and you've set up Dawn of War, I'm turning around and leaving. Unless I'm playing Votan, I go first. Not kidding. I wouldn't put you through that. Yeah,
I don't think there's any differing opinions on this.
Yeah, even the designers of the game don't want you to play Dawn of War right now. So,
Yep.
Goodbye.
Sweet. So it seems like we've got a pretty even spread here. We've got Crucible all the way up in the deploy on the line. Tipping Point is based. Sweeping and Search and Art of War, Hammer and Cringe, and Dawn of War in Shoot's gun. Pretty rigid stratification. I feel like the last time when we've done these in the past, we usually end up with more bunching. I don't know what to make of that. It's just an observation. But, that's kind of the deployments. If you're writing a tournament pack, don't play Dawn of War. Don't. And avoid Hammer and Anvil as well, I guess. You guys have any other thoughts on this before we're ready to move on to our next section?
No, I think we're good to go.
Sweet.
We're moving on to primary missions, right?
If my computer allows us, please.
Nick, you want to take us through, as Tyler's computer is struggling to exist, can you talk a little bit about some of the primary missions and how they've changed in Pariah as opposed to Leviathan? Just like overview style.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about this a bit last week, right? Big things is we received a few new ones. I don't know how many off the top of my head. But I know it's like Linchpin, whatever the guarding one is.
Burden of Trust.
Terraform? Yeah, those are the three new ones, right? And then we've got Take and Hold, which is exactly the same. Hold 1, Hold 2, Hold 3. We've got Purge the Foe, which is mostly the same, except there's no kill more turn 1, right? I think you can still get kill, but you can't get kill more.
I believe that's correct.
Cool. So the one change we were asking about, Purge the Foe, which is awesome. Supply Drop, which is unchanged. That's one of the objectives, disappear over the course of the game and get you lots of points as the game goes on. I'm trying to remember other ones. Unexploded Ordnance, which is the new servo skulls, has changed quite a bit. It is now like an action to move it. The points are still the same, but it's also one of those like Dawn of War where it only shows up once in the recommended mission packet, so you're probably never going to be playing that primary. Trying to remember what else we had.
Don't worry too much about the full list. Let's pick one and start breaking it down.
I think the default one will probably be Linchpin for most people. So this is a mission where you score 3 points for holding your home field and then 3 points for holding midfields, unless you also hold your home field and then the midfields are worth 5. So I kind of think of this as Vital Grounds, like an expansion on Vital Ground, which was the old mission from Leviathan, where your home field was worth 2 and the middle objective disappeared. In that it has the same vibe, where your home field is like kind of your base of operations that you kind of control by default. But then, at least with this mission, you know, the midfield objectives aren't impossibly hard. You know, they aren't mega valuable for holding every single one. I feel like every time you missed out on 5 points at Vital Ground, it was like backbreaking because your expected primary over the course of the game was like 14 or something crazy like that. So Linchpin, I think, is a pretty cool mission. I think it's a very stable one. The one part I don't like about it is how many points you can score at the end. Because the end of you know, you score it at the end. The player who goes second scores at the end of the game. The primary for that is uncapped. So if you go second, you can theoretically score, 23 points on primary in one turn, which is, in my opinion, way too big of a swing. They should probably cap all of the primary end of game primaries at 15. That's enough of a big swing. So
yeah, and realistically, you're like scoring 18 at the end. Like, that's not hard to do unless your opponent's tabled you. I mean, that happened in our game the other day, right? So yeah. Where would you rank Linchpin in a tier?
I would probably put it in. See, I really like it except for that one thing. So, like, does that bump it from deploying the line down to base, or does that bump it from base down to Art of War? I think it's going to be like at the bottom of base tier, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's still a fun mission to play, and it creates really cool stuff where, like, because there's a middle objective on like Vital Ground, right? Like, you're scrapping over that middle a lot. Like, your expected primary is like 8 a turn, right? And you're fighting for maybe getting 13. But every once in a while, too, like, you can, like, maybe you get an overextension or you break through your opponent's lines and you put them on a 3. And if they don't return the favor to you, then you can start, like, accruing advantage. And the ebb and flow of that is very fun. I also especially enjoy playing it on Tipping Point because of the staggered objectives. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think
I put it in the base.
I think part of the reason I like this one so much is because it pairs very well with both Tipping Point and Crucible of Battle, which are, in my opinion, the two best deployments. So they go hand in hand very well. Hey, let's go!
All right, I think we're getting places. I've gone downstairs where it is cooler. At Skylar's advice, I have put my laptop computer on a cooling rack from the oven to increase circulation. Things are cooling down. We're getting places.
All right, well, put Linchpin into base tier. That's where we're going.
That sounds good to me. I love this mission.
With this? Do you agree with this?
I would consider that to be the lowest reasonable place that you could put it. I would honestly not be. I would not be particularly disgruntled if you said to put it in deploy on the line tier. It's a great mission.
Yeah, we were saying the only reason it stays out of deploy on the line is that you can get like a huge swing going second. Like the fact that you could get maybe 23 and like usually get 18 pretty easily.
Usually get 18 pretty easily by holding 3 objectives outside your deployment zone and your home field. Like,
I mean, if you've
how
been
different
like,
is that from
back and forth?
Yeah, for sure, but like, how different is that from like take and hold? Do you hold that against take and hold?
That's fair. But that's what we were saying. Like, that's the one thing that's kind of the knock against it, right?
I don't think that's a knock against it at all, particularly as a mission. Yeah, I'm fine not putting it all the way up. We'll argue about it later.
Yep.
Shall we move toward Terraform?
Yeah, let's do Terraform. I like this mission quite a lot. It's really fun. Basically, for those who haven't experienced it yet, you do midfield actions, and they take a full turn to complete, so your opponent has a chance to stop you. But if they don't stop you, which is either kill the unit or contest the objective, you complete the Terraform, and from that point onward, that objective, regardless of who controls it, scores you 2 victory points in each of your command phases. So you are rewarded for taking objectives and maintaining a strong control over them, especially if you do those actions early, because those points will accrue more over the course of the game. I really like Terraform. There's also a strong but not backbreaking advantage to going second, because the Terraform action completes at the end of the game. So if you're able to like lurch out, Terraform 2 or 3 objectives in the last turn, that gets you a bonus like 4 to 6 points, which I think is really cool. So as much as it rewards you for going first because you can start the actions earlier, it also rewards you for going second because you can get guaranteed actions later in the game if you're able to contest your opponent's terraforms. So I think this one's really fun. And it also like gives you the same points for holding your home field as midfields. So if you don't get terraforms off, it's not like the end of the world. You can still score points just by like holding your expansion, holding your home. That gets you 8. That's totally respectable. I love Terraform. I think it's really fun. What about you guys?
Yeah, I could not agree more. We play it in the stat rep that, again, you can check out right now at youtube.com/statcheck in the Vanguard Nids versus Tide Orcs game, where we got to see it have a bunch of different play-ins, right? You ended up going in... did you go first? Yeah, you went first, and Kirsten got one of them off early, and even though you didn't end up holding that objective a lot, you just kept getting points for it. Bottom 5, I terraformed in a bunch of places and scored a bunch of points for it. It was super cool. It's a thing you actually have to be thinking about all the time. And putting another action in the primary is really great, especially one that's not quite as binary as Scorched Earth, where, especially in the old version of Scorched Earth, where you could only do one, having it be able to happen in a bunch of different places and be a little thing, as opposed to, oh my gosh, my home field is on fire, I need to fix it right now, or I'm going to loot, like, it's a nice middle ground where there's just a little bit more going on, and I really appreciate that in a primary. I think this was a tight needle to thread, and I think they freaking nailed it. How about you, Nick?
Yeah, I honestly, I might put this one above Linchpin, maybe. I enjoy all of the little, like, plays you can make to try to get more terraforms, right? Like, kind of what we were talking about last week. Like, you could try to block off parts of the board and go for, like, a thing where you're like, okay, I'm going to make it really hard for you to deny 2 terraforms turn 1. But, like, maybe my army's really exposed now. Or you can go for like the safe play and just be like, I'm going to lock down my like natural expansion terraform, and that's it. You could try to like deploy an infiltrating unit and immediately go for your opponents to draw like a unit out. And your opponent gets to decide like how important this is. And even doing it later in the game can still give you some points. So I think it's like super cool. I think it's super fun.
Yeah. I know this is like not a very competitive thing to say, but I also love the thematics of this mission. Of like your guys get to go and like set up either, you know, you're playing orcs and you go and set up a camp on that objective, or like you're playing Tyranids, you start like digesting that terrain feature and all the biomass in that area, or like you're playing a chaos army, you can set up a little warp portal and like you can twist the area of the battlefield to your army's liking. It's so cool.
Do you remember the old Votan mining secondary?
Yeah,
that's like basically
what was that? Lake Claim.
Lake Claim, dude.
Yes.
And no.
No. Prospects of
Lake
Wealth.
Claim was the goofy place one.
It was Prospects of Wealth, wasn't it?
That's what it was. Yeah, Lake Claim was the one where your opponent played a mini game and you had to go grab objectives at the end of the game.
Yes.
Yeah, Prospects of Wealth though. I loved this. The Zerkers, after they beat a unit to death, the 3 of them were just sitting there mining on an objective, and they're like, "Don't stop me." So
cool.
Yeah.
Deploy the line tier. Let's be bold.
Yeah. Holy. It's called
Boom.
Diggy Hole, I think. Yeah, that's actually, that is exactly what it was called. But yeah, I agree.
Sweet. Let's just keep moving on down the line here. Up next is Take and Hold. Hold 1, 2, 3 for 5 apiece. Still a very solid mission. Still just playing Warhammer. But I think relative to the pack, Take and Hold has definitely fallen down a little bit. I think it used to be the pinnacle of competitive 40k, and they just could not write a mission that was better than it, and that was a real shame because it is boring as sin. So to instead say that we finally have missions that are fun and exciting and interesting, and also competitively viable and bring deep and interesting gameplay without throwing your arms in the air because the supply drop went the wrong way, like... I think primary we're going to see here is one of the strongest parts of the Pariah pack, and as a result, Take and Hold is going to drop down to like low-based High Art of War in my mind at this point.
It's definitely behind Terraform and Linchpin. Like Terraform and Linchpin are just like, they create similar gameplay patterns, but they're just more fun. And they're not like swingy in a way that's uncontrollable. Like Terraform and Linchpin, like everything is entirely within your control, but they're more fun, right? I like that Linchpin, it's like, you know, your home field's worth less. Take and Hold, like your home field being worth 5 is like kind of boring. So yeah, I'd agree.
Totally.
Maybe we might lower it down based off where we put the rest of
we'll put it in low base for the time being, but Art of War it may be coming for you soon. All right. Kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum, going from the most beloved mission of Leviathan to the most despised, albeit with a couple of changes and a brand new name. It's Mike Brandt's signature mission, Unexploded Ordnance, definitely not Deploy Servo Skulls. There were some serious changes to how this mission works. Most notably, you're no longer moving things for free just because you stand near them. Instead, it is now an action to move something, which is a great change. Logistically, this mission is still a nightmare. Competitively, it still radically skews toward going first and being able to do the things early. And I think the logistics, more than anything else, are going to drag it to cringe at best. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Yep.
I think
I don't really have any original opinions on this, but I just think it's kind of, why play this when there's so many other amazing options? It's cringe at best.
Cringe, maybe even Shoots Gun. If not, Shoots Gun bottom of cringe. I'll give them a point, I guess, for making it not horrible.
If they had literally just slapped a new name on it and not changed anything, I would have been rather.
Would have made a new tier below Shoots Gun.
Exactly. On the plus side, also though, they like with Dawn of War, this did not show up in a lot of places in the Pariah pack. It shows up in Dawn of War, funny enough. So I appreciate that. Again, this is not about the Pariah Tournament Companion Pack. This is just about the missions as they exist. So it's a bad mission, but good job keeping it in the weird fun zone for casuals who want to play that. We should play it on stream at some point, strictly for entertainment value, but I don't see it coming to any tournaments near you anytime soon.
If you put this mission or any other mission that has you like placing objectives, like the ritual, in your mission pack, and you don't have like terrain that can detach from the base, you're the devil.
You're a bad person. You should feel bad about yourself.
I hate it. It sucks. So
you're a Shoots Gun tier person.
Yeah, logistically, this mission's a nightmare if like the terrain is not built with it in mind. So that also
it's a nightmare for that reason. It's a nightmare if you don't have chips. If you're a TO and you put this mission in your pack or ritual, you need to provide chips because people play mats these days. You got to have extra. You don't have to like have them on every table, but like have them available so that people don't wind up trying to shuffle mats around. Oh my gosh.
Just ruining the game state left and right, dude.
Totally. This is another one of those things that if TTS ever got really, really good, I'm sure this mission would be way more fun and interesting to try. But as the game exists in meat space, and GW is committed to it continuing to exist primarily, if not exclusively, in meat space, what are we doing? Sweet. So, like not online?
All right. Let's continue.
There's
from
meat
that
space
side.
and cyberspace, those are the things that exist. Anyway, let's talk about the other mission that we were just mentioning. There was the ritual. The other objectives get put in weird places. Only a couple of modest changes here. The most obvious one being that objectives are 12 apart instead of 9 apart now. And then also a couple of changes that sort of trickle down into impacting this with things. The removal of double cleanse makes this mission a lot better, I think, because that was a pretty toxic interaction when we were able to pull that off. But simultaneously, the introduction of Unbroken Wall kind of makes this mission a real bummer if you're trying to avoid that happening. So, I don't know. What do you guys think about Ritual right now? I know we've all played it, especially as it is supposedly a WTC mission this year that we got to be ready for. Great facial expression.
Lucas
Someone clipped that. That was really funny.
I love this mission. Okay, like for real though, the change from 9 inches to 12 inches is pretty big. Because it means that you can no longer like daisy chain 4 objectives into your safe corner of Crucible of Battle and just set up a little camp there while your opponent does the same thing, and then the person who goes second lurches out for 5 more primary, and then they end up winning by 5. It's a lot harder to do that. So like primary is a little bit more challenging to come by because the middle objective is worth more. There's fewer objectives on the board, or maybe there won't be as few. There's the same number, but they're in like more dangerous places because they have to be a little bit further forward. I like the ritual. Yeah. I think it's like maybe a little bit better than it was in Leviathan, but in the same token, I think the overall, like you guys have mentioned, the overall mission quality is improved. So it's probably about the same. I think we put it in Art of War tier last time. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think people got mad about how high we rated it last time, so probably. I will also mention
cringe.
Yeah,
I think it probably belongs at the bottom. Go ahead.
I will also mention, in addition to the changes to secondaries and secret missions that I talked about, it also changes a lot because the action economy is a lot harder to come by these days. I think that it used to be that you just spawn an objective every single turn if you were even remotely playing the game. I played this mission into Tanner with his Tau the other day, and he spawned one objective. And Tau are like an army that loves to do actions because they can action while still guiding, and they just literally did not have time to spawn anything else.
We also
particulars
gained,
to his list.
Reaction secondaries, right?
Exactly. That's the big thing. Is that because there are so many more action-based secondaries now, and also doing the action-based primary can be pretty tricky, especially with also a lot of Action Monkey units getting pulled out, with OC0 no longer doing actions and no longer doing actions in combat or advancing and acting and all that nonsense. I think this mission is a lot more interesting than it used to be. I'm just not entirely convinced that outweighs the fact that it might be a little bit less competitive in some other ways. So yeah, I think Art of War is a pretty good place for it.
Yeah, I didn't love the Ritual last mission pack. But that's mostly because we didn't play it that often. So when I did, it felt like clunky because like trying to place them, like what you said, right? Oh no, the terrain doesn't work with it. Oh no, I gotta go dig my chips out of my bag. Okay. Or like I see all these people without chips, like all that stuff's super annoying. But for some reason, like remember in like winter and fall, every TO here was like, let's put Ritual Scrambler fields in every pack. So I got used to playing the Ritual pretty quickly after that. And honestly, after playing it like 4 or 5 times, I was like, okay, this mission is more interesting than I like give it credit for. There is like a very interesting gameplay loop to it that isn't like we sit on our expansions and then trade in the middle back and forth forever, you know, and maybe someone lances out and like deletes me or not, you know. The fact that you have to create your own expansion is like a pretty interesting idea. So I think that's what puts it in Art of War over cringe. I will agree though, it is annoying to play with and it is not like my favorite mission. And it is very like taxing mentally compared to some of the other ones. But yeah, that's my thoughts.
Cool. Sweet. Well, speaking of doing actions on objectives, it's also worth bringing up our next mission, Scorched Earth, which received a couple of somewhat modest changes. You can finish burning endgame now, and I think the other one is you can burn in multiple places at once. Is that correct?
I don't know if you can burn multiple places at once, but I think you can burn each midfield more than once.
What? Oh, like you can burn multiple
more than one
midfields and score.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's correct.
It used to be like you'd score 5 point if one midfield was burned by you over the course of the game. But now I think you could potentially burn all 3 and score 15.
Totally.
They also a relatively minor change, but you can now do the action on the objective rather than within an inch of the chip, which was like a stupid measurement. So I'm glad they got rid of that.
I think most people forgot that was even in the thing.
Exactly. Why?
I think they may have also gotten rid of the little thing where it was like, if you burn your home field, your opponent gets points. I think they got rid of it.
No, I think it's still there. I think if your home field gets burned, your opponent gets 10. I think.
Okay.
I don't know where my mission pack is today.
Whatever the case, evidently we haven't played a lot of this one here because it is a fairly vanilla mission compared to a lot of the other new and exciting missions over here. But it was a staple for a while. It was such a beloved staple that it got people to play Dawn of War, which was nonsense. Yeah, evidently it's a good mission, but I don't think it's blowing anyone's socks out of the water. Steve brings up a good point here that you score the burn points instantly instead of endgame. So if you earn objectives early on, you may neglect your ability to activate a secret mission because that can give you a big bump of primary immediately. Think about that when you're doing the secret mission minigame and whatnot.
Alex Pena brings up another funny point. If you burn your home field and give your opponent 10, they can't score the 20 points off the secret mission for having their Warlord on it. So it might be a 10-point differential if you're up against Magnus.
Mm-hmm.
Yo, Team England, take a note of that one.
Yeah, me burning my home field top of turn 1 against the T-Suns.
Do it, pussies.
Bro, that's the secret. That's how you unlock the ability to take secret missions. Your opponent runs off all their objectives, and you're like, nah, dog, I'm burning this shit. You're scoring points. I will be down.
and then I'm gonna go to your home field.
Mm-hmm.
You bait them into burning.
Excellent.
All right. I think Scorched Earth was a good mission last mission pack, and they only made it better. I think why we never saw it is because the deployment it was paired with, Dawn of War, was like really bad for that mission. We played it a lot of times on like other deployments, like Sweeping and like Crucible, and I had a ton of fun with it. So I would put Scorched Earth maybe like top of Art of War, or bottom of Based.
I think it belongs in the bottom of Based. I love this mission.
Honestly, I might swap it with Take and Hold. Like I might say, let's put Take and Hold top of Art of War, like we said, and put Scorched Earth in Take and Hold's place.
I think those two kind of inhabit the same area. You know?
Yeah, but I do think Scorched Earth is more interesting than Take and Hold as a
For
mission,
sure.
and more fun. Like, I mean, look at all the stuff we just talked about there. Like, yes, not a fantastic idea to burn your home field, but like, there's some funny stuff you could do with this mission.
Yeah, I like this one.
Nice.
Shall we move
All
on
right.
to the Search and Destroy mission?
Oh, Tyler's favorite mission.
God damn it. Supply drop
Also,
is
I think it's your second
horrible.
favorite.
It's my second favorite mission, absolutely. Supply drop is a bad mission. I don't think anyone argues with this anymore. It's a wild swing of points to go around that in a mission pack that already has massively wild swings of points toward the end, which is nonsense. And I think that it was considered acceptable because there were so many other bad missions, and now there aren't. So it is god-awful. I wouldn't go so far as to say I'd rather play Unexploded Ordnance, but I think this mission is cringe tier at best.
Yeah, I agree. It's not a particularly fun mission to play. At least, I guess, like the mission, the armies that are good at playing this mission are also the armies that are good at doing the hold 3 at the end of the game, which like doesn't work on this. So there's the benefit of that. But yeah, I mean, it's tough to judge this mission on its own in a vacuum because I'm so used to playing it on Search and Destroy, which like for me automatically puts it in a shoots gun tier. But yeah, I would definitely say it's a cringe mission. Ignoring deployment type.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of suggestions for how to make this one better, a lot of which I like. I think the easiest one they could have done was just make the objectives that disappear on turn 4 and 5 your natural expansion, your opponent's natural expansion. Have the middle one stick around no matter what, so that by definition no one is like favored as the game goes on, or like it's not as swingy rather. That would be a great fix, but they just didn't do that. And until they do something like that, I think this belongs in cringe tier. I agree.
Yeah, it's funny with hidden supplies.
Sweet.
I think we played that once.
Interesting. Let's keep rolling because we got a lot more to cover. Burden of Trust is the last brand new primary here. This is the one where you're scoring. What are the numbers here? Is it 4-2, 4 for hold, and then 2 for defend, or
This
is it
the new character?
Yeah.
one.
So 4 points for holding
Sites of Power.
objectives, and then you get to declare a guardian unit who, if they're still alive and holding the objective at the end of your opponent's turn, you will score an additional 2 points. You don't score primary for your home field, but you can guard your home field, which is a nice little back and forth balancing act there. Guarding, as I understand it, is not an action, right? It's just like a thing that you're assigning a unit to do. So brings a kind of an interesting extra dimension there as opposed to some of the other ones that take up actioning abilities. But yeah, this mission is cool. It's very low scoring in my experience. And as a result becomes the most vulnerable to secret missions other than like supply drop, but we're not pretending that that's real here. It's one that I'm curious to see how often it gets used. It's definitely the weakest of the 3 between it, Lynchpin, and Terraform. I think, honestly, I'd prefer to play the Ritual. But not because I hate it. I just don't... There's like not a ton that makes me want to actively go play this mission.
Yeah, I mean, between the 3 that they added in Pariah Nexus, I think this is definitely the weakest one. I haven't played this one personally. I've only seen it played once. So I kind of need some more data before I make a firm conclusion, but I think this probably belongs below the Ritual.
Lucas, you're forgetting rule number 1. Dauntless
What is rule number
Confidence. You have to.
Yeah,
you are the
you're
authority.
right. This is the most Art of War tier mission you ever seen. It belongs below the ritual and will stay there forever. I'll never change my opinion, despite having basically no evidence to go off of.
I don't think it belongs below.
That's
the
what we're
ritual.
talking about.
Like, we just spent like 10 minutes talking about how the ritual's annoying to play. And I don't
No,
think this
the
mission's
ritual's
annoying
cool to play.
I think this
the
mission's just
ritual-
kind of boring. Like, this mission to
ritual
me
is
is just like boring terraform, right? Because it's like you're kind of doing a similar thing where it's a unit's walking up, but instead of giving up its activation, it's like I'm declaring to stay here to get 2 points, but at least I can still like shoot and fight. But it's like, so it's similar in that regard. Your home field's worth less, yeah, but like you're still dedicating unit back there and getting some points. I just think it's not a super exciting mission. So I put it in Art of War above Ritual.
I'll put it in Art of War, but I'm not putting it above Ritual. I played Ritual a bunch recently, and it's a ton of fun. It's logistically annoying, but like gameplay mechanics wise, I think the Ritual is a way better mission at this point.
Remake Scrambled Fields.
We can argue about that later. All right, yeah, I'm glad
Foe
the
the Purge.
gone. Purge the Foe. It's still awful. They didn't change nearly enough about it. I still hate it. The fact that it's still hold 1, hold more, and not hold 1, hold 2, or hold 3, or something, makes it very hard to score primary by standing places. And if you're both standing places and killing things a lot, this is a very tie-oriented mission because you both just kind of run up the score. It's an interesting interaction where suddenly, like, if you are a hold 3 army, like, you can just take Unbreakable Wall and get a 40, but your opponent is scoring more than 40 because primary is freaking free in this mission. It still massively favors going in second because of the way that kill more works and being able to get hold more at the end of the game now that you can't get kill more turn 1. Like, I think this is a terrible mission. I think that this goes in cringe above supply drop, but I'm willing to entertain arguments that it should go lower than that.
I'm happy they fixed it. I think before it was like bottom of cringe or top of shoots, or even like in shoots gun. By fixed, I mean like, yeah, got rid of the like kill more turn 1. But yeah, the fact of how kill more works and how bottom primary works in this. I think it's just like now we have so many more exciting missions. I think it was like supply drop where before there were worse missions, and so we accepted this like okay mission. But now that there's so much more exciting missions to play, it's like fallen down. So yeah, I'd say cringe.
Agreed.
Sweet. So here we are. How do we feel about our primary breakdown here? We got Terraform it as the only deploy on the line mission. Linchpin trailing just a little bit behind in the top of base, followed by Scorched Earth and then Taken Hold. Art of War.
Taken Hold's the
You wanna
definition
move-
of Art of War, dude.
No,
It is a
no,
very-
no.
It's not base.
I refuse to let
It's not
Grandpa
base.
40K down into the middling tiers.
No. Art of War is like, you know, it's okay. You know, it's like
Taking Hold
very
is a
mid. You know?
strong ass mission. It's solid.
I will
guess,
say
like,
I
I
can't
would
have
rather
Taken Hold
play-
and
I'd rather play Terraform, Linchpin, and Scorched Earth. Like,
Yeah, that's why it's
Wait.
below those 3. You fucking doofus.
but like, I wouldn't even like if someone was like Linchpin, Scorched Earth, Taken Hold. I would be like, oh yeah, Linchpin and Scorched Earth are a tier above. I'm sorry, dude. I think Taken Hold's good, but I think it's right where a balanced mission needs to be, which is why it belongs in the middle.
yeah. I think though if you put Taken Hold down into Art of War, you have to drop Burden of Trust to cringe. I cannot have Taken Hold and Burden of Trust in the same tier. That's nonsense.
yeah, that's disgusting.
That's not what a
dude.
tier is.
It even
Alright.
feels wrong to put it in the same tier.
It feels wrong to put it in the same tier as Ritual.
All right, fine.
Like,
Throw it back up there then. The most Art of War mission that exists in base.
I guess
tier.
the
Sounds
other
good.
option is to do something like this.
No.
No, there's no.
No?
That's too much.
We don't have 3. The primary missions are good right now. We don't have 3 that are shoots gun. 100%.
Yeah.
No, 0%. Yeah, I think this is fine, and move those 2 up, or move one of them up, whatever you prefer.
You're getting
Yeah.
awful
Yeah.
confident with your computer there, dude. No, supply
We're
drop.
get, I mean, we got
supply drop.
I'm
We gotta
leaving
ignore
my
the primary.
camera off for a reason.
Move it back up.
Sweet. All right. Cool. Moving
Yeah,
moving
I agree
supply
with
drop
Tanner
back to
Herbert
cringe.
here, dude.
All right.
There is nothing more Art of War than standing on one midfield turn and scoring 5 points, dude.
All right. Sweet.
What a Tanner statement.
Well, let's go ahead and move on then to probably the wackiest. No, secondaries. All right. Do you want to do secondaries or do you want to do mission rules first?
Mission rules.
Second-
And let's
mission
move through
rules.
these quickly because we got some questions too.
We do. All right, we got
Yes,
mission
and
rules. There's a whole lot of these, and they vary a bunch. Most of these involve something to do with battle line. They largely have smaller impacts than some of the bigger ones, but bigger impacts than some of the smaller ones. So they're trying to kind of make them all matter a little bit. There is no more Chilling Rain, which I think is a good change insofar as it makes the games more interesting, and is a bad change insofar as I don't know what the new default is just yet. And not being able to slam Crucible, Take and Hold, Chilling Rain makes practicing use slightly more brain power.
So
and I
take
don't
and
like
hold
that.
is the default, dude. Oh, all right.
Yes, I don't
Um,
think anyone ever contested that. Sweet. So let's get into some of these in particular. Starting off with Swift Action.
Do you guys want me
which
to
is
quickly
battle
read the
line
card?
can-
Since
No, we should
If you
just
have your
read
card
these.
in front of you, I mean, But yeah, Swift Action is battle line can advance an act and fall back an act. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. Cool.
Yep, that's right.
I think that this is a really good mission rule. It's a little bit of a boost to battle line in an interesting way, but it's not anything super crazy and doesn't fundamentally change how anybody operates. Rewards battle line, which was the thing they were trying to do. We can argue about whether or not it was a good idea. I think this is mission accomplishes exactly what it says in the tin. That sounds like the
I think it's
definition of base
based,
to me.
unless you're playing Chaos Knights, then it's cringe.
Yeah, dude, that shit cring.
All right.
Sweet.
Whoa!
Up next is interesting. Up next is Fog of War, which is one of my personal favorites. I played this the other day and really enjoyed it. This is no generic strats top or turn one, battle round one. Wild thing.
Right?
Sorry?
Also, isn't there a cover or something goofy round one?
Who gets it? Is it battle line get covered? Does everyone get covered?
Everyone gets covered.
It's
which they
everyone
did
is covered
already.
and can't generic strats because it's so foggy.
Cool.
I think this goes in Art of War. It's cool. It doesn't change the games that much, except it does change it if you're going for a turn one charge and you can't CP reroll.
Yes.
Exactly.
But also, you can't be overwatched. I cannot express how big of a deal no Overwatch turn one is if you are trying to apply some early pressure. That is such a nice thing to not worry about.
Yeah.
I also personally absolutely hate
Yeah.
turn one grenades, and that going away, very cool. I like this a lot.
But this is probably the new big
yeah, I think
chilling,
this is
right?
low-based, high Art of War. Yeah.
I think
I
Art
put
of
it in
War.
Art of War.
I think it's a
So
very
if that's the
mid,
case, it's probably Art of
cool,
War.
not bad, not good. You know?
Sweet. Up next, we got Stalwarts. The hell does that do, Lucas? I know we played it, but we forgot about it because
Stalwarts.
I didn't bring battle line.
mission. So Stalwarts is your battle line can shoot and act, and action in combat as well. So I like this one. It is a nice buff to battle line until you play into the wrong army, and then it's ridiculous. Having played one game with Stalwarts and Stalwarts CK, if you happen to play on an action mission like Ritual or Scorched or Terraform, it's ridiculous because you get to score all of the points while tabling your opponent. So I really like this one, but I think it's going to go lower off in base because every once in a while there's going to be some stupid combination that's going to create a feels bad. What the fuck? You're an idiot for that, but okay. I'm Tyler. I don't play any battle line because I just like big robots.
Why does Stalwarts let you table your opponent while scoring? That's the fallback
Shoot.
and act in combat, right?
You can shoot in combat,
No.
or you can shoot and act. Sorry.
Oh, that's what Stalwarts is. Okay.
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought that was Swift Action. Swift Action is the fallback and advance one, huh?
Yep.
Yeah. The
All right,
brigands
yeah,
walk out.
yeah.
They terraform 2 objectives. They recover assets in 2 places, and they all shoot.
Yeah, I think Stalwarts is probably Art of War. It's cringe if you're playing CK. It's a cool that they're incentivizing, right, buffs to battle line. Seeing basic troops is cool. But again, it kind of creates a thing of like, what if your basic troop is a Hearthkin warrior and your battle line is a brigand, right? One of those is going to action and shoot way better than the other. So yeah,
I will stomach it in Art of War tier.
I like
All
the
right.
actions. Right, you're supposed to give up an activation. That was a cool change. The action in
Up
combat
next we've
part
got-
is nice.
All right, up next we've got Rapid Escalation. This is a wacky one. This is one battle line unit from your army can arrive from strategic reserves turn 1. Can it be regular reserves or just strat reserves?
Pretty sure it's strat reserves.
Strat reserves.
Cool. That's wacky. I feel like this should not matter until it does and becomes backbreaking. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know where it's going to be backbreaking, but it feels like a very scary box to open. Hopefully it never comes up.
Yeah,
And that seems like
It'll be
That's
funny with that mech. Right?
for something like orcs as well. I think it's really good. Just like turn
Mhm.
1, you get to put a unit of boys wherever the hell you want to.
It's what
Pretty
250 points or less, right? It's the what you're allowed to do?
200. Oh, so they cannot have any characters. Never mind. Yeah, fuck that.
I don't know.
Okay,
I think this
yeah,
is
no, this is
I
a
think
nice
this
little
is
buff. You get to
cool.
take your one battle line unit and put it wherever you want to in mid board. Yeah, that's cool. Top Art of War, I guess. Bottom of Art of War.
yeah, I don't think it's better
Yeah,
than
I
Fog
think
of
it's
War.
one that's like you don't build around it, and you either forget it happens, or your opponent's like, "What's up? I score 3 points off this," and they're like, "Ah, cool."
Yep.
Yeah. By contrast, now we get to talk about an old favorite secondary, Raised Banners, rears its ugly head again, but in a really cool way this time.
I
Raised
love this
Banners.
one.
This is might be my favorite. I think this should be the default personally, more than Fog of War. If at the end of your player turn you control an objective that has not yet had a banner raised on it, with a battle line unit is on that objective, you raise a banner on that objective, and you score 1 additional secondary point. That's all that happens.
think
It can only happen on each
it's really
objective for you
boring.
once per game.
But it's cool. No, it's not cool. It's really boring,
It's
but
a
it's like
fun little
it's
mini
simple.
game.
Yeah. It's like a little punish for not bringing battle line, but it's not backbreaking, right? Like if you bring battle line, you'll probably get between 2 and 4 points. And if you don't bring battle line, then you're giving up 2 to 4 points. It's not the end of the world, but it's a cool little thing to do.
Yeah, I quite like it.
Yep.
I quite like it.
Smoke
I especially like
mirrors,
that it
baby.
happens
Smoke
immediately.
mirrors is
So if you
cool.
just blitz across the table and steal someone's primary for a moment, hey, get an
You
extra
get a bonus
point.
point.
It's very cool.
Yep.
Yeah. Talk to us about Smoke and Mirrors, Lucas. Why is it so cool?
Yeah, so after both players deploy their armies, each player takes a unit from their army and puts it into strat reserve, and it can be up to 500 points. So this
Battle
is like
line, right?
Nope, 1 unit.
Oh, it's just a unit? Oh, damn.
Yep. So this is and this is before the first turn roll off. So it kind of gives both players a pseudo redeploy, but it has to go into strat reserve. So you can kind of like fake people out with this, and there's all sorts of like, mini, not mind games in the sense of like, oh, I lost the game because I lost the mind game. But it's a cool little pregame square off between your opponent. I like this one.
I love deploying my infiltrators in a giant line and then pulling them back, dude.
Oh, that's annoying. Didn't even think about that. Never mind. The shit sucks.
Although,
Suit's
like
gone.
most armies with infiltrators can just do that, like with an enhancement already. So,
Mm-hmm.
except for Votan, release the Jaegers GW so I can smoke and mirrors Lucas. Thank you. Yeah, I think this one's cool. I don't really know what tier I'd put it in, so I'll just default to you guys.
I'm putting it right behind Fog of War, but ahead of Stalwarts.
That's
I think
respectable.
it's cool, but it's not crazy.
Yep.
Tell us about Adapt or Die.
Oh, fucking Christ, this one. Where'd that go? So if you're playing fixed, once per battle at the end of your turn, you can get a new fixed mission. And if you're playing tactical, twice per battle, you can draw an extra card and shuffle one of your first 2 cards back into your deck. So it basically gives you a little mulligan. And I think one of the redeeming factors for this card is I think it benefits fixed a little more than tactical, because being able to like massively pivot your pregame strategy partway through the game to another scoring paradigm is pretty cool. And I'm seeing a lot more tactical than fixed in Pariah. And I think bringing it back a little bit via this mission rule to, okay, fixed has another like little wrinkle to it that you can use to play, I think is pretty cool. So because it enables fixed a little more, I'm a little bit more inclined to like it, but I don't know. I'm torn. How do you guys feel about this?
Yeah, I haven't gotten to experience this yet, so I'm going to hold a little bit of judgment. But in principle, it seems like rocking the boat a little bit more than I'd like it to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see what it has to do. There's my very beautiful face for you, Daniel. Love you. Where does that land it? Like, I almost want to say it's kind of cringe.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cringe.
Yeah. But we'll see. I could be swayed on this, especially if it becomes popular. What I worry about is it coming up like round 4 of 1 GT and no one knowing what to do with it, and the one person that does taking massive advantage of it.
Yeah.
So we'll see. A lot of these depend on what ends up happening. Anyway, speaking of old words that get reused in fun new ways, tell us about the new prepared positions. If Fog of War is the new everyone gets cover.
Prepared positions is battle line can go to ground and heroic for 0. Yay! Heroic intervention needed to get better.
I think this is similar to Stalwarts, where it's like some armies are going to be able to abuse this way more than others, right? Like getting heroic by 5 Hearthkin is like cool, but getting heroic by 20 boys and 3 characters is it's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, any melee, like lots of melee
I don't know if it belongs all the way down and shoots gun.
Frankly, I think like Chaos Knights as well really like this one, right? Carnivores just like constantly babysitting each other. It's like kind of stupid, especially because they reroll charges. So like you always make the heroic. It's like, okay, come on, man.
Yeah, I think they're imagining this being like you can protect your little battle line unit, right? Your little action monkey can go to ground for free, but that's not what's going to be like, you know.
Yeah, the go to ground
too good.
Yeah. The go to ground is a great change. If the heroic change didn't happen and it was they can heroic for 1, I'd be super down. I need to turn my video off again. Cool. But freebie heroic is a mess and should not be a thing for such units. I'm putting it in shoots gun because I think that's terrible. You should not play this. Hidden supplies. Good old fashioned hidden supplies. 6 objectives. It's a classic. I feel like everybody loves this. This is an excellent thing.
Yep. Yeah, it's cool. And it's usually paired well, like in their mission pack.
I think it's deploy on the line, dude. I love having 6 objectives on the board.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's great. I think if it becomes the default for, it shouldn't be the default all the time, but it's something that should be in every tournament pack. It's great.
I think that we talk about default a lot, but I think that they've done a good job of trying not to make a default mission. Like there's a lot of cool missions to play now. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And most of these mission rules aren't super swingy, as we're seeing. It's like Stalwarts, Prepared, and Adapter Die are maybe the most like swingy based off of faction, but like the rest of them are pretty fair and balanced.
I think so. Inspired Leadership. What a weird one. If your warlord is on the table, units, what is it, within 12 who have line of sight to him? Get +1 leadership
when they're
within 9.
No, they can be in your. It's when your warlord's outside the DZ. The unit can be within your DZ.
Yeah, but when the warlord leaves the DZ, they give out like a 9-inch aura of battle shock or whatever.
Or +1 leadership as long as they can see. It's a 9-inch and visible aura.
I think this is like high base to deploy on the line. I think there's like far too few rules that like rely on the warlord. I think it's really cool. I think it's really cool.
Horrible.
Botan player alert. Leadership 7 alert.
I think it's really cool. I think it's cool that like the model that's your warlord and the position of your warlord matters. I think it's a really cool rule.
Totally. If it gave any other buff, I'd be all over it. And the fact that it's handing out +1 leadership when Battle Shock is already like clinging on for dear life as a mechanic is mega lame.
I don't think Battle Shock's clinging on for dear life as a mechanic. I think it's just that some models and armies have like way too like high leadership values, you know?
Yes, and them getting
like,
+1 is very stupid.
Fair enough, but like, I don't know. I think it's cool. I think it's cool to like have something that rewards your warlord being important.
I'll put it here because I agreed. It's a really cool concept, at least.
And it's like, it's not like, you know, that it's not like a guaranteed, right? Like they have to be outside your DZ within 9 invisible. So it's like they can lock down a point or something. It's like, hey, this one area is hard to assault as long as my warlord's alive. But like you can go kill their warlord, you know? Okay, they lose it.
Yeah. Daniel suggests it could be an aura of cover. I would much prefer that. I think that'd be really cool. Yeah, interesting. All right, sweet.
I just like that they're like experimenting with that. So like the knights and like Space Wolf thing of like hunting down your warlords, like a cool mechanic. So.
Yeah, with the loss of the free warlord trait, I can appreciate making the warlord seem impactful again. Cool. Are we happy with this list? Anything that needs changing? Art of War tier seems pretty crowded. I wouldn't mind bumping rapid escalation down to cringe.
I wouldn't mind bumping inspired leadership up, frankly. Nick kind of convinced me. I think it's cool.
All right.
Maybe there could be a cap on it, where it could be like your warlord could like, you know, cause like a battle shock reroll or something like that. Like I don't think battle shock should be able to be modified above like a 5, for example, right?
I mean it can't. That is a rule.
Oh, perfect. Well, there we go.
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right. Seems reasonable then. Cool. Well, we're already hour 20 in. We got to keep grooving. Let's move on down to the secondaries, which I think is the thing that we're going to have the most strong and potentially disagreeing opinions on. So let's break them down. Starting off with good old-fashioned no prisoners, better known as kill some shit. 2 points per unit that you kill over the course of your player turn, to a cap of 5. You know it, you love it.
Yep, I think this one's still pretty cool. I like how incremental it is. I like that you can get some points for something small. You can get a lot of points for investing quite a lot. I think it belongs in base tier. We might end up bumping it down into Art of War just because of how vanilla it is, but given how kind of swingy some of these missions are, I like the stability of no prisoners.
Yeah. I like how it scales 2, 4, 5. That like the third unit is like not that much, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Storm hostile objectives. Slight changes. Drop down to 4 points, but much more importantly, well, it got a really weird change. We had to process this correctly. You don't have to cycle it turn 1 if you draw it. You're allowed to keep it, but you're not allowed to score it turn 1 still. You can just draw it and hold on to it.
What?
Look at the card, Lucas. Look at the card.
Oh, that's what I was going to go do.
Mm-hmm. Should have some intermission music while Lucas looks for this.
Lamau, that's goofy. That's funny. All right, wow, that card. Why the fuck would you ever keep that on turn 1?
Yeah. It's weird. I don't know why they did that. I wonder if that was a mistake on their part, but like, yeah, it's a weird change.
Interesting. I mean, I like that they lowered the number of points. This is going to be a theme across the secondaries, is they lowered like the total number of points you can score on it. Not even the total, but like so for something like Cleanse, which we'll talk about later, they like, you know, each increment was lowered by 1. In a lot of cases, this is like getting rid of the tactical bonus. They did that with Storm. It's now worth 4. They'll be doing that with Assassinate as well. They'll be lowering it to 4 for tactical. I like that. It just means that each card you draw is a little bit more important. There's less just like auto 5s. I feel like in Leviathan all the time, it was like, I happen to flip 2 decent cards, I got a 10. Okay, next turn I happen to flip 2 decent cards, I got a 10. I've already scored half my secondaries. That's kind of stupid. I'd much rather there be like some 2s, 3s, and 4s in there to make every point a little bit more important.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like this is in a pretty similar place to No Prisoners, but I think it's probably a little bit better.
Yeah, Storm's cool. I like the little mini game of playing around it when your opponent hasn't drawn it yet.
Yeah, absolutely. That's always a good time. The contested and Ice Storm. 1+ Saves in the comments says that you draw Storm and Assassinate turn 1 can only toss 1. You can't toss Assassinate. Do you just mean because you can't toss Assassinate turn 1? There's nothing that says that you can't redraw all of your cards if you're allowed to redraw them, right? Like if you draw Storm, you're allowed to
draw behind
draw
as well.
Totally, but like behind is not a redraw. Like if you draw Storm and Cull the Horde and they don't have any cullable targets, you get to recycle both of them, right? Oh, he just means because
recycling is different than getting rid of Cull because you can't score it.
Yeah, for sure. I see. Oh, he's just saying because they're good in the late game, but they're bad in the early game. So it's a bummer when you draw them turn 1, when you would have liked to have drawn them on turn 3 or 4. That makes total sense. Cool. All right, up next is a brand new one called Recover Assets. This is a really wonky secondary, and I'm curious to hear y'all's thoughts on this. This is doing actions with units in 3 places, wholly within your DZ, wholly within No Man's Land, and wholly within the opponent's DZ. It takes until the end of your opponent's next turn, which is not a short period of time last time I checked, and you only score 3 points for doing it in 2 places, a full, 6 points for doing it in 3? 5 points for doing it in 3? 6 points for doing it in 3. So a really interesting one there. Probably one of the best turn 5 draws in the game right now, because it does complete endgame, but a really interesting decision point when you draw it, especially in like a mid-turn. Like you draw that turn 3, like what are you going to do about it? Curious to hear your thoughts, Lucas.
Yeah, I like this one quite a lot, actually. It's one of my favorite new secondaries. I like that getting the easy level, which is, if you draw it earlier mid-game, you can like do it in the mid-board and you're home for relatively free for 3 points. But your opponent also has a chance to interact with it. Like if they see you setting up for it, they can be like, yo, rapid ingress, I'm going to go take out your midfielder cover assets guy. And that just not only costs you 3 points, but it also costs you a card that's going to stay in your hand for a whole turn and score you 0. So I like this one quite a lot. It also has like a high ceiling, right? Because like you were saying, if you have board control, if you're able to infiltrate your opponent's backfield, if you draw this late, you can definitely score 6 points on this. So I like Recover Assets quite a lot. Personally, I'd put it at the top of Based. I think it's pretty damn cool. How do you guys feel?
Yeah, I think it's one of the best design action secondaries, because it has like variable scoring. Like you can choose whether to try to go for 3 or go for 6, and also has a variety of units that you can use it on, right? Because you could either go for you could use like a deep striking / infiltrating unit and get your opponent's like DZ and your DZ or something like that. You can use different units on it, right? Like everyone brings these different action monkey units, like deep striking ones, infiltrating ones that are like very fast, ones that scout. And they're all going to be good at doing this secondary depending on like where it is on the board. And also, I think there's only one action secondary that completes immediately. So this one, having your opponent have a turn to stop it, and also the decision of how many resources to invest in it is super cool. So I think this is probably the best design action secondary, so it belongs up in base tier.
Yeah. Daniel says you can do it with like 5 units. Is that true? Are you able to do it with more than 1 unit in a particular region? That was news to me. Great catch, Daniel, if that's the case. I'm not getting us more intermission music. That took too many clicks.
I think so.
Okay, read it off. Read off verbatim.
One or more.
Starts your shooting phase. Units 2 or more units from your army. If each of those units is wholly within a different one of the following zones: DZ, No Man's Land, opponent's DZ.
Okay, so no, you cannot, because they all have to be in different zones. You can't do it with 2 units in the same zone.
Oh, within a different one of the following areas. Oh yeah. Okay.
Very nice try, Daniel. All right, but yeah, I agree. This is an awesome one. I'm comfortable calling this a line tier strictly out of just how much depth there is to figure out what you want to do with it. It's going to sometimes be a great thing to pull, and sometimes a terrible thing to pull. And it's going to be up to you to make that situation happen. What the hell is happening here, computer? Just put it there. Great.
It's also
Awesome.
like what you were saying about the end of the game, right? It's not like a guaranteed 6 because like having the Holy Within, unless you set up for it, like going into turn like bottom of 5, you know, like you might not get the 6 because your unit couldn't get Holy Within. They're not fast enough. So
Totally
your opponent
possible.
could see you still have it in the deck and try to kill like your one fast unit left. And now you can't get within their DZ.
Yeah, and also like giving up 3 whole activations can be pretty meaningful in a turn 5 situation. It's not like like everyone's just got units to do actions with lying around all the time. Very cool. All right, up next is an old friend behind enemy lines. This one got the treatment that Lucas was talking about with tactical, where it's only 4 points now if you do it at the highest level, no longer 5. But it also did not get the recycle treatment. You still do not get to redraw this turn 1, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe they did.
I think you do. I think you do.
You do? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great change.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I like behind. It's cool. It rewards you for going way out of your way. The one part I don't like about it is just how little reward there is for doing it with 2 units. You get 3 points for doing it with 1. You get 4 points for doing it with 3. So plus 3 points and then plus 1 point. Like, what's my incentive to do it with 2 units?
It's not 2-4? I thought it was 2-4. Is it 3-4?
It's 3-4.
Oh wow. Okay.
So I feel like you almost always get a 3 on this.
Because it still requires you to be wholly within, right?
Yes.
Like that's tough to pull off. Especially
I think that might actually be a good change. Because if you were getting it with 2, you were probably getting it automatically without even trying. Whereas getting it with 1 can often be a big hump to get over. And if it were 2-4, I think would be bummed at just how much work you have to do to get a unit into that place for so little reward. Because if 2 was on the menu, it was probably automatic in the first place.
That's fair.
I
just think it's basically a 3-point card. It's like do one thing for 3 points, and that's the one bummer I feel about it. I think it's still a good secondary.
Didn't this one used to not care if you were battle shocked?
Yes, that is correct. Does it care now?
It does care now, I believe.
Oh, interesting. That's fine. I'd personally put it in Art of War.
Yeah, I'd put it in Art of War as well.
Yeah,
I think it's a fine secondary. I think it like went up from like cringe to Art of War. It was pretty bad before when you like drew a turn 1 or 2 and you're like, lol.
Overforce. I still love this one. I still fucking love Overforce, boys. What about y'all?
Yeah, it's an awesome secondary. It has some of the most classic play around and gambit back and forth nonsense to it. It rewards you in a scaling way for doing a thing that you may have wanted to do already, but also may not have. It's something that's very much embedded in all of our consciences now. So it's a great part of the game. I don't see any reason to change it. I hope it never goes away. Love it.
Yeah, I don't think it belongs in deploying the line though. I think it's too easy. Like it's one of those like you draw like turns 2 through 4 and you're like, oh, 5 points. Like there's gonna be units on objectives. You're gonna have to kill them.
I think specifically because there's so much counterplay, it's not an automatic 5 points on turns 2 through 4.
Like why is there counterplay?
Because
you don't put
time,
easy to kill units on the objectives. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Or like you invest once you see your opponent draw overwhelming, you invest defensive resources in keeping your units alive. Like there's so much interaction in the secondary. I think it's the most played around secondary, right? Like no one is out here being like, I'm going to deny your no prisoners by killing myself. Like no, people all the time are like, I'm not going to specifically not going to do this to play on Overforce. I'm not going to do this to play on Overforce. Like maybe a close second is Storm Hostile, but I love how much people can play around this one.
Okay.
I still love it personally.
I love it.
I think it's just one of those where it's like someone draws it turn 2 and someone doesn't, and the person who draws it turn 2 with like prisoners is like lol free 10 or something like that. Like that happens all the time.
Yeah, I suppose.
It's like you guys have decided to commit to fighting because you have to, and then the person draws this instantly, right? So I agree though. The counter you've convinced me with the counterplay. I think that does introduce a cool element to it. Like
I'm
it
gonna
is kind of one of those where
strongly
it's like,
advocate for bottom of deploying the line, man. I fucking love this one.
Okay.
Let's go. We can bump it down later if we want.
Yeah. On the other end of the spectrum, we have Cleanse, which got worse. I don't know why. It got harder because the action economy is a lot more complicated now. And now it's only 2-4 like it is when it's fixed. I appreciate that the action economy got worse, but also like all the armies that wanted to do Cleanse as a fixed are completely invalidated in the first place. I don't know why they made this worse. This is a cringe secondary in my mind at this point.
Agreed.
I think you hate to draw it because it's like you have to go put a unit on an objective. That unit has to like because we used to do with Cleanse a lot was you drew it and you're like, oh, my unit has a pistol. I'll just cleanse in combat or something, right? But now it's like you have to have a unit whose job is to go walk up to the objective if there's space on it, right? Like if you guys are fighting over it.
And then control the objective and then not do anything.
And give up your activation to not fight off. Like the only time you're happy to see Cleanse is if you draw it like turn 1 or turn 5 and you get like a 2 on it, right? Yeah, it's pretty... I'm never happy to see the secondary now.
Yeah, this one sucks.
Speaking of secondaries that suck, Cole the Horde.
It would be pretty cool if it wasn't
lame as hell.
No, I think it's a cool tactical.
Yeah.
I think it's a bad fix.
What you were saying, Tyler, how you can build your list to try to make Cole the Horde annoying for your opponent, like if it's a mid-game draw and your 20 man's like chilling in your backfield. I think that's cool.
Yeah.
What isn't cool is Lamau Horde armies you don't get to exist.
Yeah, I think that if there were ever a secondary that should be different, whether it's fixed or tactical, it would absolutely be this one. At the very least, this should be a 4-5, not a flat 5. I would personally love to see it be... I would love to see it be like a sliding scale where it's like 4, 4, 3, 3, 3, 3 as a fix, but like that's unnecessarily complicated, so I don't see that happening. Invalidating entire archetypes with this secondary while making Bring It Down significantly less punishing is exceptionally stupid. Big thumbs down from me. Like, I can't play Unending Swarm anymore. Sag. I'm glad they went in and fixed the 19-man loophole, because that was, like, objectively dumb, but also, like, how about we fix it by never introducing this card in the first place? This is a bad decision.
Yep.
Yeah. Sweet. All right. Assassinate. Great secondary. Love that it can be fixed. Love that it can be tactical. It punishes a particular thing that no one is entirely reliant on, because it punishes both in the list building and gameplay stages, right? If you don't want someone to take Assassinate, don't bring too many characters. And if someone takes Assassinate, you can keep your character safe in the backfield. It's a really cool secondary that leads to a lot of great gameplay in both directions, because it's not infinity points just for your opponent taking a normal number of characters. Big thumbs up. Top of base.
Yep. Meanwhile, extend battle lines. I think we put it in cringe before. I think this one can firmly go in Shoots Gun.
Yep, I think it's better than Cole the Horde, but not by much.
They were trying to do change some things and make things different and make points harder to score. Why the F did they leave the easiest to score secondary completely unchanged? Like,
yeah, it should have gone down to 4.
You fail to score extend battle lines like 1 out of 40 or 50 games, regardless of the turn or the board state or the matchup. Like, what? This is dumb. This one sucks.
We've got an interesting question in the chat for you, Tyler.
Totally. Cultist Chen C asks, why does Cole the Horde invalidate archetypes, but Bring It Down and Assassinate doesn't? Well, the biggest one is Bring It Down is the easiest comparison. To get max Cole the Horde, if I'm playing Swarm Tyranids, you need to kill not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 squads of gargoyles. Something that you will kill every single turn. You will kill a squad, or I am not playing the game at all. In order to score, and that is full maximum points. If by some miracle you only kill 3, you get 15. 15! Yeah, I give up Cole the Horde for 90-point units, and it's 5 secondary for you for showing up, right? By contrast, Chaos Knights, in theory the most bring-it-downable archetype, you need to kill not 1, not 2, but 10 War Dogs to get 20 points. 10! If you yeah, it used to
be 7.
Yeah. It used to be 7, and 6 would get you 18. Now 6 gets you 12, right?
That's ridiculous.
Like, people still played Bring It...
Are only killing 6 or 7.
Yeah. People played Chaos Knights all the time at that points level and had no problem giving up the secondary, which was totally reasonable. But killing a monster vehicle is always challenging. Killing a horde of infantry is very often not. And the game plan for monster vehicle armies can often be, my monsters and vehicles sit in the back and shoot you, while my little screens and skirmishers keep you from getting to them. There is no way to play a horde army getting forward. Wasn't the same true of Paragons, Crisis Suits, and Killicans? Absolutely. Tau getting these changes? Great changes. I don't understand why, hey, we made one archetype no longer completely invalid means we need to fully invalidate a different one, right?
Yeah.
I think that the change from models to units for Bring It Down, great change, right? A single unit of Crisis Suits giving up like 14 points, very silly. Very silly. This is a great change for that. Yeah, Paragons they give up so few points now. It's very silly. And we talked about Assassinate earlier, how there's ways to play around it both in list building and in game playing. Just neither of those exist for Cola Horde. It's a very silly stratagem, or a secondary rather. Those are my thoughts on that. If you want to hear more about it, come join us in the Discord, patreon.com/statcheck.
Like, Bring It Down as a fixed secondary should punish tanky hole spam. Like, if I'm spamming undercosted, slightly overstated tanks, that was the idea behind it. And now, and it shouldn't be punishing, I'm bringing a bunch of T5, like, 4 wound vehicles. And they fixed that on Bring It Down, but then they also made it so the, T10 spamming vehicle army is no longer punished. So
sweet. So we've seen good secondaries and bad secondaries in terms of things that give up too many or too few points. Time for more giving up too many points. What the fuck is containment?
So this is an action you do outside your deployment zone. It completes immediately if you're within 9 inches of a table edge. Every different table edge you scan gets you 3 points to a cap of 6. So in other words, you tow outside your deployment zone with 2 units and you instantly get 6 points.
Put it in shoot gun.
Yeah, the shit is fucking horrible, man. Like, what? Why? You introduce recover assets, which has interaction and appropriately rewards risk, and then you also introduce containment, which is the same number of points with 0 risk and 0 interaction. Like, the direct comparison of those means that this thing, probably deserves to be in shoot gun tier. You there, Tyler?
Yep. I hate it. I think it's a terrible secondary.
Yep. Cool.
I think it is probably worse than Extend.
Yeah.
Because I've seen situations where Extend isn't really a thing. Containment being a full 6 is just even sillier than Extend being 5.
You can literally score this without thinking about it, right? Like, I've seen people be like, oh, I'm within 21 of this board edge with my Rhino. 3 points. Like, you don't have to plan for it at all.
Yeah, very silly. Cool. All right, so last pack in Leviathan, deploy teleport homers was too good. This is just like an unequivocal truth. It was getting taken all the damn time. It was tons of free points. They've decided to knock it down a peg into the new established locus, which is now only 2 points for the center and only 4 points for your opponent's DZ, be it tactical or fixed. I think this is a good change.
I think so too.
Yeah. I think this is a comfortably Art of War tier secondary at this point.
Yep.
Yeah. I'd agree.
You're never upset to see it, but you're never like banking on, oh my god, I drew established locus. Like, it's a secondary.
Yep.
Cool.
It's 2
requires
and 4
you to go a little bit out of your way to score some points. Yep, that's what I said. 2 for the center, 4 for your opponent's DZ. But yeah. Speaking of things changing and only getting better, oh my god, they fixed area denial. Wow.
Yes.
I think area denial is good.
Yes.
Area Denial went from the most complicated secondary ever to explain to the most simplistic, obvious thing that has ever happened. It does what it says on the tin. Great secondary, totally valid to be worth 5 points when you do it the hard way. Like, I love this secondary.
Yep.
I think that this is comfortably top of base.
Exactly where I'd put it. Yep.
Excellent secondary.
Yep.
Cool. That brings us to Bring It Down, which I think we have discussed a bunch. Kind of a bummer. I really don't like the changes. I like that at least you now discard it. What did they change the discard to? Do you score it if they're all dead like Assassinate, or do you just get to cycle it if it's not possible?
You get a new one, I think.
Because like unlike Assassinate, right, you have to put a character in your army, I believe.
Yeah, it's like bottom Art of War, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It doesn't do what it's supposed to do, but it's still a fine one to draw.
Yeah.
It should be a fixed that super punishes vehicle-only armies, and it doesn't do enough of that. It is the opposite problem of Golda Horde.
Totally. All right. Engage on all fronts. Got a couple changes. For one, it's way easier to score now. You don't have that silly T mystery zone. You just need to be wholly within a table quadrant. And is it outside of 3 or 6 in the center? I think it's 6.
6.
Outside of 6. So outside of that center circle, so you're not, really easily jumping into one from another in the middle. Yep, still can't be Battle Shock. Couldn't in the past, can't in the present. It's only worth 2/4 tactical now instead of 3/5, which I feel like is probably fair, but relative to the existence of things like containment and extend battle lines feels kind of silly to me.
Exactly.
I think that Engage is comfortably Art of War tier. I'd slip it in like on one side of Established Locus or the other. What do you think?
I think Behind's cooler than Engage.
I think Behind is cooler than Engage.
Yeah. I like the Behind's like reward. I think Engage should be like 3/4. Like Behind is 3/4.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's too many hoops for 2.
I don't know. I feel like Behind for 2 is basically automatic if you're playing most tables.
Yeah, but trying to get 2 units wholly within your opponent's CC for a 4 is like pretty annoying. I'm talking about Engage. Sorry, not Behind. Gotcha.
I think Engage, the baby Engage is just so easy, and full Engage is quite hard. I don't know.
That's what I like about it. I think an easy number of points, an easy to score secondary should be 2 points.
Fair.
Yes, totally. All right, up next is I think probably one of the most controversial ones in the pack here, which is Marked for Death. We've had different versions of rules like this in the game a number of times, and the current iteration goes like this. You flip the secondary, your opponent nominates 3 units that are on the table. If they're attached units, it's the whole attached unit. And you have to go kill them. If you kill any of them, you score a full 5 points, but there is no redraw mechanic here. There's nothing spicy. If they have fewer than 3, it's just all the units. This can be pretty polarizing because if you draw it early, it can be really hard to get. And if you draw it late, it can be stupidly easy to score 5. What do you guys think about this?
Yeah, the polarizing aspect is the one thing I don't like. I think there's definitely a sweet spot, like on turn 3 or 4 when it's game's getting really scrappy. It's cool to like try to force your opponent to go out of their way or do something they don't want to do, or target specific units that you want them to go after as like a trap. I think that's kind of cool. But the problem is like on turn 5 it's automatic, and on turn 1 and 2 it's impossible. So it feels a little bit bad most of the game.
At the very least, I would like to see this get a cycle option turn 1. I think would be a very quick and effective patch.
I agree with that.
I think currently it is
bottom Art of War.
It's better than Bring It Down. Don't be silly. But I also think that Bring It Down is going to get knocked into cringe at some point.
It's difficult enough for its score. Like, the fact that you kill 1 unit, immediately get 5 is, like, entirely fair. Like, honestly, like, this is one that should be worth 6 over, like, containment. I guess, I like your idea of it being a redraw turn 1 instead. I think that's better.
Yeah. I would also not mind this being a 3 for 1, 2 for 6, 6 for 2. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
that'd be a variable thing, like overwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, like, if you can kill 2 of the 3 units that I nominate, that seems worthy of 6 points to me. Yeah, it's weird. It's a really cool idea, like Lucas said. It sometimes has some incredibly interesting mind game counterplay, right? This is supposed to, in theory, replace Tempting Target and does a lot of the same things. We talked about this last week, I think. So there's some cool stuff there. It's not
quite
on paper, it's really cool. In practice, it often feels like it's missing something because of how polarizing it can be.
Yep.
Yeah, the timing is
all right. Stronghold.
I still like this one.
Yeah,
Defend,
I think Defend is somewhere top of Art of War, bottom of Base. I think it's just a good, cool secondary.
Yeah.
It rewards you for doing what you're already gonna do on most missions, but also it gives your opponent an incentive to if they want to dive deep, and now they give you a dud.
Totally.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, I think this is great. I think this is game design 101 knocks it out of the park. It's not jumping. I might honestly put no prisoners.
Yeah,
because it's a lot more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet. That brings us to Sabotage, the last of the new objectives. Lucas, break down how Sabotage works for us, because it's a little bit weird.
So Sabotage is an action, much like Recover Assets. It takes the full battle round to complete, so your opponent has their turn to try to stop you. You have to be outside your deployment zone to do the action, and you also have to be within a terrain feature. Not wholly within, but as long as you're toe in, you can do the action. Takes a full turn to complete, and then if your unit completes it while it's in no man's land, 3 points. If they complete it in your opponent's DZ, 6 points. So this is the final of that trio of new secondaries that you can score toe outside your deployment zone, those being Containment, Recover Assets, and Sabotage. Recover Assets we loved, Containment we hated. I think Sabotage is going to kind of be right in the middle. I think it, much like Recover Assets, it kind of appropriately rewards you for doing something relatively mundane, just going outside your deployment zone and trying to keep that unit alive. But again, your opponent has a turn of interaction. I like it a little bit less than Recover Assets because it's less all in. If you drop a unit in your opponent's deployment zone and start sabotaging, they can just easily stop that for -6 points. Whereas for Recover, there's a little bit more granularity where they can stop maybe that easy to stop unit, but not the 2 that are more safe, and you still score a 3. So it's there's a little bit more granularity, like I was saying. I think it kind of belongs right in the middle. Top of Art of War seems pretty safe to me. I like Sabotage.
Yeah, it seems situationally easier locus, but also it depends on where the terrain is, So
It's another one that's really nice to grab bottom 5 for timing wise here. Grabbing that if you have something that can get towed into your opponent's DZ for a terrain feature, is it wholly within your opponent's DZ but only towed into the terrain? Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. If you can get a guy wholly within your opponent's DZ and tap in that terrain piece and just slam 6 points bottom 5, that can be pretty spicy. But with Capture Enemy Outpost out of the pool, I think that some of these being a little more accessible for big points late game is totally fine.
That's fair.
This brings us to our last secondary, Secure No Man's Land. Extend battle lines way cooler older brother who actually requires some amount of resources to score and rewards you proportionally instead of giving you 5 for nothing. It's still probably too easy, and I think it should probably be 2-4 instead of 2-5. I don't know why it's 2-5, but it's not nearly as egregious. I would probably put it Art of War tier, between Engage and Marked.
I was gonna say that, yeah.
Sure, that's fair. I think that's fair.
Yeah, and I think that comfortably
Bring
says
it down.
Bring it down to cringe.
Straight down to cringe, brother.
Yeah.
This feels like a good spread, though.
Yeah, I think this is about what we're looking for. Recover assets and overwhelming in S tier. Area denial, assassination, storm hostile,
so high in base?
Defend and prisoners.
I think you can put
Defend
assassinate
is
down
cooler
by
than
prisoners.
assassinate.
Yeah, for sure.
I think assassinate's a slightly more interesting prisoners.
Yep.
Yep.
I agree.
Okay.
AKA the
Area
secondary
denial.
opponent draws every time the Grimnir walks forward.
My question,
Every time,
brothers,
brother.
is Recover Assets truly the best secondary?
I think it's better than Overwhelming Force.
I think area denial could probably get bumped up.
I think so. I like Area Denial. I like how simple it is, and it rewards you for controlling the middle, which is a cool part of Warhammer. take the center.
Yeah.
And unlike extend and secure, it does like force you to get close to your opponent to score some points.
Totally.
Because how did they change the points? Is this still a full 5 if there's nothing near there?
Yeah, but it's your unit has to be wholly with. Is it no? Your unit has to be within,
within
3.
6.
Period. Within 3.
Oh, within 3.
Not within
Okay.
6. If your opponent has no one within 3, it's 3 points or 2 points. If your opponent has no one within 6, it's 5 points.
That's what it was.
So it's way easier to deny, but way harder to waltz ass backwards into for them being in the funny zone.
Also, no stupid wholly within figuring out if one guy is a quarter of an inch out.
Yep, that was always an awful thing when you were like, oh man, your unit is all like, yeah, terrible. So yeah, great. I think we're pretty happy with this. Get your screenshots now and yell at us in the comments and on Discord. We will be in the comments discussing this on YouTube. And while you're there in the comment section, drop us a like and a subscription as well. Ring that bell, as they say, to get notified when we go live. We do so vaguely every Monday at 4:30.
Tyler's new computer, dude.
It doesn't, to be clear.
Yeah, it actually doesn't.
I think very notably here, boys, we got some new stinkers.
Yeah. Containment is a bummer.
Yeah.
Get it out of my game.
Is containment worse than coal? Because coal at least has some merit. Like when you're playing tactical, it's not the worst thing in the world, right?
You know what? You make a good point. It's at least like the and like Lucas said earlier, the list building choice of let me build in a 20-man backfield holder to mess with my opponents when they draw coal mid game. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Or like what people used to do with Assassinate back in the day, like I'm gonna run 4 instead of 5. Like you could run 60 instead of 40, or not instead of 80. You know, right? 3 20-man units, which does suck though because a lot of the horde detachments are built around spamming them. But like at least you have the option to try to deny coal.
Yep.
So.
Yep. It's all right, sweet. So I think this is where we're going to land and there. And we're almost those 2 hours in. So it is definitely time to flip over to some listener questions.
Let's do it.
Get your screenshots in 3, 2, 1. Can I take down the screen share, please? Hey, look at that. We did it. All right. That, and then if I tell it to just stop entirely, will my computer be happy? Maybe. All right. Questions coming in hot because computer issues are not going to have them up on screen. But here we go. Dan asks, specifically for Lucas, I would imagine, what is the best secret mission for 11 Hogs and Chaos Knights?
Unbroken Wall.
Surely it's Unbroken Wall, right? Yeah, totally. Cool. Derek asks, have you figured out a good mental checklist or ways to keep track of opponents' secret missions in a game that doesn't add too much mental load?
Ooh. So you can counter both Unbroken Wall and Shatter Cohesion by... So if you just reduce yourself to controlling your home and controlling a natural expansion, I think you counter every single secret mission, right? If you control,
you counter Wall, you counter Cohesion, you counter Command Insertion.
And if
you don't counter the battle line,
right? Okay. So that, I think,
if you hold your natural expansion with a battle line unit and you hold your home field, you counter all of them.
Right. So yeah, I think Shatter Cohesion is going to be the least seen one because it's basically just table a bitch, and if you're getting tabled, you've probably lost the game anyway. Probably. The other 3, you can counter 2 of them by holding, like, pretend you're playing extend battle lines on turn 5, right? Like just hold your home, hold an expansion, and then you counter those 2. The battle line one kind of requires a little more nuance, but generally just keep people's battle line out of your deployment zone. And if they have uppy downy and 3-inch deep strike, then fuck you, I guess.
Again, when your opponent has those kind of abilities, don't bother trying to stop it. Try to stop it by keeping your battle line alive and outside your DZ, right? That is the part of that you can't forget about. They have to hunt them down, keep them safe, keep them healthy, keep them ready to jump out at the very last second.
Yeah.
Cool. Next question coming out from beginner Sam. What is the new list formula for scoring in the new system?
Fast trash. Like what units to include in your army? Fast trash is always
Fast
great.
trash is great. Lone ops are fantastic right now. Anything that infiltrates is great because you want to get into the funny corner, right? Like the hub of the game right now is the corner behind the terrain behind your natural expansion. So figure out who's going to get there and do all your actions. If it's an infiltrating lone op, that's awesome. If you don't play one of the two armies that I play, it might be something else. I think that people are really underrating things like assassins right now for that kind of job if you're playing an army that doesn't have Space Marine scouts. But yeah, something that does that.
Tough, cheap trash. Like any army that has bikers, like war bikers are great for this. Chaos Space Marines and Space Marines also have bikers. The Chaos Space Marine ones are actually pretty good. You can take one unit of those and score recover, sabotage, and containment just towed outside your DZ with a very tough unit. Fast trash is good.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, up next, this is probably going at me here. What units / how would you build the scoring into GSE Outlander Claw lists? Edit including secret missions. Well, if you're playing Outlander Claw, your secret mission play is going to be a little bit messy. Not quite as easy as it might be otherwise. Other than trying to do some blip-related nonsense to get battle line in places. So I would not worry too much about that. I don't think you're trying to do secret missions if you're playing Outlander Claw. I think that as far as the secondaries are concerned, though, those are real easy. Reductuses and Sanctuses and Calormorphs are all fantastic. Calormorphs less so, because part of their durability comes from the reactive move, which doesn't help you do long-term actions, because it'll break them. But I think Sanctus and Reductus just real good at what they do. Park them in that early corner, and then make sure that you bully people out of that with your bikes early on, and your laser cars. Yeah, but also GSC don't exist, so why are we asking these questions? Up next, Isaac asks a very logistical question. Love this. Do you magnetize your bases? And if so, what size do you use? We absolutely do. We've got a whole system in this house for how that works. So why don't you break it down, Lucas?
Yeah, so my personal system works for some, but not everyone, is washers. So you can get like at Ace Hardware or whatever your hardware store is, like these tubs of washers that are cheap when you buy them in bulk. And there are sizes that fit perfectly on 25s, perfectly on 32s, not quite perfectly on 40s. And they also make your miniature heavier, which if you like heavy miniatures, I'm a big heavy miniatures boy, helps out there. But then they stick very well to magnetic tape, which is what I was getting to. So if you have big tubs, let me see. This one, unfortunately, is full of miniatures, but I'm going to grab it real quick. So this is a tub that I've lined the bottom with magnetic tape there. And when you put these washered miniatures on the magnetic tape, they stick. It's not like you can like flip it upside down and have them hang there. But if you shake it around, they won't move, which is a great boon if you're traveling. Like if you want to store this in the top of a plane, I've done that plenty of times. If you want to store it in a train, it also works very well, like in the upper racks or whatever. So that's what I like doing for storage. And I think it works really well. It's also like fairly cheap as opposed to buying a bunch of expensive magnets.
Yeah, absolutely. I use a similar system for small stuff. For big stuff, I do switch over to the N52 neodymiums that then stick to sheet steel that does a similar kind of thing. Anything that's an 1/8 of an inch thick will fit under a base without taking while keeping the base flush. So that's what we use for that. I use for smaller guys, I'll use something pretty small, nothing really bigger than 1/4 by 1/4 for sure, probably smaller than that, frankly. And then for bigger things, I'll do 1/4 by 1/8 for usually 2 of them on something like a monster, maybe 3 if it's a heavier one. Yeah, they're great. Would highly recommend. If you're trying to find washers for 28s, this was like a whole thing for me for a while. You want to go to the metric section if you live in the US. I'm sure it's called just the section if you live in the UK or wherever else. But in the US, go to the metric washer section. You're looking for, I think they're called like 14s or something. Are 28 mil across almost exactly, a little bit on the smaller side. So they work out real well for that. Yeah, that's what we got there. Lucas, I know you said you got out a bit of a hard cap here, so thank you for joining us. We'll see you at the next one, but Nick and I will burst through the rest of these questions. All right.
Bye, gentlemen. Mwah. Mwah. Take care, everyone. I
Ciao.
love you all.
Love you too, brother. All right. Josh, how do you spell your last name? Josh asks, can you rate the quality of this tier list compared to the main show and Art of War tier lists? Then can you give it an internal and external rating for Camilleri? Unlike the Art of War and Stat Check tier lists, this actually has entirely different things on it. And also, it's way better because we're smarter than they are, and you heard it here first. Internal balance, S tier. External balance, S tier. Other thoughts, Mr. Nicholas?
Yeah, I mean, this tier list is objectively the best because it was made by us. So.
Exactly. I don't know why we're asking such silly questions.
No, like in all seriousness, I guess like everyone's gonna have different opinions based off their local meta. So, yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Paul asks, I have locked in my list for local RTT, 3 Abominants and 6 Carnivores. Any tips for playing the suboptimal list? Sadly, Lucas just left, but press and hold W.
Yeah. Probably strat reserve at least 1 Carnivore. Carnivores as an Ingress threat are always terrifying.
Totally.
Because they have Knights of Shade, right? So walking through walls, very spooky. At least I play way differently whenever Lucas ingresses a Carnivore than when he doesn't. The Abominants, not quite so sure. A lot of people are hyped on the 3 Rampager train, so good luck with your Abominants. But yeah, you definitely don't want to feed your opponent like one thing at a time, because that's how they piecemeal your Knights down.
Totally. Yeah. Deploy everyone on the line and run full speed at your opponent. You're not going to do very well trying to sit and play a trade game. And with an army like this, you're just trying to stat check people. So give yourself the best opportunity possible to do that by deploying on the line.
Yep.
Cool. I'm going to slightly alter Mr. McJurrick's question here. What is your favorite hot dog condiment?
Yeah, I don't think we have a whole time for a condiment tier list.
Yeah.
I think for me, like a really good mustard is super important. I won't settle for like yellow mustard.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, I'm a big fan of.
For me, it's got
good ketchup.
For me, it's got to be kraut. I love me some good kraut. Kim says I like mayo on my hot dogs. That is false. I love mayo on my fries, though. Oh man, the Euros got me on that when we were in Belgium. I did not expect to like that, but that was delicious. But no, anything with a good bite to it. Kraut or kimchi or anything fermented goes super well with something real salty, salt, acid, brine cut to go with the really fatty meat, and a nice soft, often a little bit sweet bread. 100% the way to go. Cool. All right, Josh again asks, how do I help my teammates get it through their thick skulls that the secret missions are really viable and they should do them in every practice game they can? Use them against them in practice games and beat their asses because of it. If they don't want to use them, lead by example. All right, more food-related questions coming in hot from Grant. Favorite fast food chicken sandwich and favorite fast food French fry. What do you got, Nick?
I don't know. I don't really eat fast food that often. I mean, my favorite fries are definitely, in Portland. PDX Sliders, if you ever come by.
Love that
place. Check that place out. But my favorite fast food chicken sandwich, I don't know. Like I said, I don't really go get fast food that often, so.
Fair enough. My favorite fast food chicken sandwich is unquestionably at Wendy's. It was the jalapeno popper chicken sandwich back when that was running for a while. I love that sandwich. I also love Wendy's fries, but I would probably give the nod to Chick-fil-A when they're actually hot enough because waffle fries are fantastic. Curly fries are a thing that I feel like I've grown out of as I've become an adult here, but
fries are good.
Yeah, the fries are delicious. All right. How does the next gen and feel about priority mission style scoring in every game? You talking about secret missions, McWhirp? Lucas absolutely hates them. I think they're not great for the game, but I don't think they're as bad as Anthony does, for example. What do you feel about this, Nick?
I mean, I haven't been secret missioned yet. I've seen a few and heard about a few that are funny. They're certainly more viable than gambits, and they are certainly they're common enough and they're easy enough to achieve, and the points are good enough that they are a completely viable strategy. I think the idea behind them is cool. Okay, you got locked in your DZ, you can choose to sacrifice something in exchange for something else. But I don't know. I think they are just a little too easy to achieve. And kind of what Lucas is saying, it sucks to like be like, my primary goal as an army is I'm going to play a pressure army who's out of gas by turn 3. And usually how you win those games is like denying your opponent's primary for the first 3 turns, and then your opponent walks out of their DZ and scores 40. That's not super fun. So
I
think the
that
primaries, right? We talked about the primary missions. I think most of the primaries are very good. So and much more interesting.
I think that the Gambit system for primary capping was better, where it was you don't score primary after turn 3. This is your end game scoring now. That made a lot more sense than, oh, surprise, it's bottom 5, you score 40 all at once. Very silly. And making it so that you just literally don't have to pay attention to primary if you know you can pull that kind of swing, as opposed to saying, all right, you got to fight for 5s and get a 10 in those first 3 turns, or you're just not scoring your full 40. I think that would have been a lot better, but here we are. Sandmaster Secret Missions busted. Are they the new meta? We've talked about that enough at this point. Derek asks, are demons low-key rad, or do they fall off the instant anyone knows how to keep their eye out for greater nesting dolls? Lucas has been playing a bunch of demons recently. I wish you were here to answer this. I don't know that they're the sauce, per se, but they're definitely low-key rad. I think that's a reasonable assessment of them. They do a lot of really cool stuff. The changes they got are neat. They make things like the Great Unclean one a lot better, which is super fun. They make the corn stuff a lot more viable, which is super fun. I don't think they're going to be winning super majors anytime soon, but I think that if you're playing them, you're not memeing like you would have been a month ago.
Yeah. I think the Thirsters, I think the Greater Unclean one are all really cool. I think there's some cool stuff in the big Tzeentch demons as well. Unfortunately, the Slaanesh demons have kind of fallen aside, outside of maybe like a few characters. But like the big Slaanesh demons are still a little too expensive. But like at least they're doing something better. Like you're not forced to play Be'lakor on every list now. So that's super cool.
I was literally about to say that. It's really nice to not see Be'lakor as mandatory anymore. Second half of the question, do Speed Freak Orcs do anything interesting or unique that makes them worth giving a second look now that Tide and Bullies got hit? I mean, you're the Speed Freaks guy, Nick. What do you think about this?
Oof. I think they were cool beforehand. I remember with that big orc like review lists the day the codex came out or got revealed. We talked about how there's like some really cool stuff you can do with that army. It's like not super consistent high damage, but it can like spike some damage in the right spots, and it seems pretty good at controlling the board. Also, with the change to bring it down, you're like much less punished for bringing it. The difference is though, your opponent probably could take bring it down and score like 16 much more easily because you are not as tanky as an Armiger. But like the meta is not really the meta doesn't really look like it's prepared for whole spam anymore. I don't know. We'll see. Like that's the thing is as the meta develops and if like knights get popular, Speed Freaks probably goes down a bit. But like you can play like Warbikers, everything can like, I guess like being able to fall back and shoot and being a vehicle, like actioning in combat isn't really a thing anymore. So you've lost a lot of value there. Yeah, I think they're cool. I don't know if they are stronger than like Warhorde or Tide. Like Lucas is still doing very well with Tide. And I think that like at the end of the day, like the orc ability, the Wa is so built around like advancing and charging, that like giving that up on like advancing and charging infantry is like pretty bad. So
totally. Yeah. All right. And last but certainly not least, our boy Touts asks, have you nerds looked at New Zealand team champs that happened this weekend? Thoughts on Morris Solly forgetting to list his Warlord again? That's mega embarrassing in 2024, Matt. Come on, be better. I had not looked at this event in the past, but I'm looking at it now. This is a 5s event, and the winning team comp, Soli's team, is CSM, Blood Angels, Chaos Knights, Sisters, and Votan, which is wild. You want to hear this Votan list, Nick? I know you love Votan.
Sure, dude. Read it out to me.
He's got a Borakir Ironmaster, a Call with Grim Demeanor, 10, 20 Hearthkin Warriors, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Sagittar, 5 Zerks with Mauls, 5 Zerks with Mauls, 5 Zerks with Mauls, all with Mole, 10 Hearthguard with Plasma and Gauntlets, and then 3, 3, 6 Bikes, and 10 Jaegers. Sure sounds like Votan to me.
Yeah, this is probably what I would start with.
Totally. Very cool.
Outside of maybe the Ironmaster, but like I'm just not a big fan of that guy.
Yeah.
I guess you need someone to ride in the last car. No, you don't.
Nope.
So I guess he's just there to be action models. I guess he's like, he fulfills that role of like what we're saying, playing like a relatively tankier unit that can stand behind a wall and do actions. Like he could stand behind a wall and be like, I'm set up for, containment, assets, and sabotage. Much better than like a champ, because the champ wants to get out there and fight shit. So, yeah, I can see the reason behind that.
Last comment on this event, Alex. The winning team was called the Mighty Cucks, which I thought was pretty funny. So I wanted to see who was on it. So I went to pairings and looked up Cucks, and they were not the only team with Cuck in the name, which is very New Zealand. You boys do your thing. How are you guys feeling with WTC list sub fast approaching? We're all very nervous. Anyone else still without a faction locked in? That is classified. Also, can you please tell Pumbaa and or Typhus about forgetting to cover past New Zealand team championships? Pumbaa and Typhus, you're bad people and you should feel bad. New Zealand is a fake place, but they do try to run events there and we should cover them. You happy, Alex? Sweet.
They're just sad that New Zealand doesn't let people visit that often, dude. It's a beautiful place.
Indeed. Taos, we're looking forward to seeing you in Belgium this year, or at least I am. Nick is unfortunately not coming, but I'm looking forward to seeing you there. Hopefully, we'll pair in War Masters this year and have a little bit of a ball and a biscuit. Yeah, sweet. We're 2 hours 10 in. Anything else, Mr. Nicholas, before we sign off for the week?
No, I think that's good.
Fantastic. Well, this time next week, we will not only be past WTC list lock, I believe we'll be past pods, and pods are next are on Sunday. So we'll have a ton of WTC stuff to talk about next week. It's going to be very exciting. We'll probably break down whatever is considered to be publicly available knowledge at that point. And you'll get to hear about it here first on Take All Comers. But with that all being said, thank you so much for joining us. I have been Tyler.
I've been Nick.
And Lucas was here a minute ago, but he's not anymore. But thank you so much for joining us, and we will catch y'all next time for some more Warhammer 40k content, focusing on the teams. Thanks again so much. We'll catch y'all next time. Have a good one, everyone.